All right, we're ready to get started. Welcome to today's work session. Today is Tuesday. We're getting started. Today is Tuesday, November 28th. Welcome. Call to order, please. And roll call.
Mayor Daggett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Aslan.
Present.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember House.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember McCarthy, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
It would be my pleasure. Please stand if you're able.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you, Mayor. The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
And Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. And I'm going to reorder the agenda and put recognition first because we have a young person here who is getting recognized for some creative and beautiful artwork. Adriana, are you here? Should we all meet you down here so you can talk about this?
So good afternoon, Mayor Daggett and Council. I'm Adriana Fisher, Housing Program Manager for the Housing Section. It's my pleasure to be here today. In 2007, the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, also known as NARO, declared October as Housing America Month. Housing America Month is a time to recognize the need for affordable housing and appreciate those who provide it in our communities. This year, in addition to our social media posts, the Housing Section recognized a sticker design contest winner for a contest named What Does Home Mean to You? To celebrate Housing America Month. The contest was open to everyone and was advertised through various channels, including social media, FUSD, and our local continuum of care, to name a few. So after the contest deadline, which was October 31st, we chose a winner, and that's why you see Arlo Fredericks. Do you want to wait? Arlo is all of 8 years old and is probably our mightiest affordable housing supporter. Right, Arlo? Based on my recent conversations with his mom, Jamie, who's sitting right here. Do you want to wave, Jamie? I can tell Arlo not only understands affordable housing, but he strongly supports it. Jamie explained Arlo perfected his design after a whole day of hard work and multiple drafts. And when he was told he won the contest, he even asked if we were going to sell the stickers to earn money for affordable housing. In our contest application, we included a question for artists to explain their inspiration, vision, and importance of the design, to which he answered, "I drew this picture called Homes for All because I think everyone should have shelter and comfort. Also, I think that homes are important because in the street you could get sick more, and if you have a house, you could take care of yourself better." Stickers featuring Arlo's design were ordered, and I'm sure you've gotten one already, and will be distributed throughout the community to promote the Housing Section's social media pages and the city's affordable housing programs. To kickstart the promotion, everyone at this meeting will receive a sticker to take home today. And with that, congratulations, Arlo. Do you want to wave? We have put together a prize just for Arlo with all of his favorite things, which consists of dragons, STEM toys, and stickers with his own design.
All right, so we have a little something extra for you to thank you for entering the contest, but mostly for caring so much about other people in our community. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the talent and creativity needed to partake in the Housing Month sticker contest. The City of Flagstaff recognizes the need for affordable housing and appreciates those who provide it in our communities. The City of Flagstaff recognizes and acknowledges your excellent contribution towards projecting your talent into what home means to you in celebrating this year's Housing America Month. The City of Flagstaff commends Arlo Fredericks for winning the Housing Sticker Design Contest. We recognize Arlo as a future leader and present him with this key to the city for his achievement and contribution to our great city.
And Dad. Is Grandpa here? Grandpa. Oh, get them all.
That basket's getting heavy. Great job, Arlo. Thank you so much. This is special. Are you an artist? Yeah.
All right, so now we're moving back up to item number 4, public participation. This enables the public to address the council about items that are not on the prepared agenda. It appears on the agenda twice, at the beginning, now, and at the end. You may speak at one or the other, but not both. Anyone wishing to speak or to comment at the meeting is asked to fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording clerk. When your item comes up on the agenda, or when your name comes up, your name will be called. You may address the council up to 3 times throughout the meeting, including comments made during public participation. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and importantly, the council during public participation cannot respond to you, so that's why we don't respond to you, and we just thank you for speaking. All right, so I am going to start with John McCartney.
Hi, thanks for giving me some time to express my concerns on the carbon neutrality effort and funding. Funding for various efforts to reverse human-caused climate change need to be utilized in a logical and effective way. A phrase that I frequently use is work both ends towards the middle. It, of course, illustrates the effectiveness of attacking a problem on more than one front. All things being equal, working from both ends would logically be twice as effective and twice as fast. I think this is the approach that we need. Since climate change change threatens our very existence. Of course, we should attack it from as many directions as makes sense to save our earth and our souls. Another common sense expression is to use the best tool for the job. The federal government is responsible for their forests. It has deeper pockets and has more direct authority over forest care, use, and maintenance. They're the best tool for forest thinning and maintenance. Large corporations, wealthy nonprofits, and the federal government have the interest, desire, and responsibility to use their wealth to develop CO2 removal technologies. They are the best tool for carbon capture. The City of Flagstaff has a stronger ability to create an environment where the greater Flagstaff area can become carbon neutral. The City of Flagstaff is the best tool to create carbon neutrality. After all, it's our sworn responsibility. On a related item, I understand that that there's an argument commonly used to sit on our laurels is to regard carbon neutrality. It's to declare that China isn't doing enough in their effort to clean up the climate. Today's Daily Sun said that China sold 30% of their new cars as EVs last year, whereas the U.S. only did 7.3. That's 4.5 times better than we're doing right now. Over in recent years, I've read several articles about China creating many climate-friendly projects, such as covering their new buildings with various foliage and gardens to reduce the heat island effect and lower the power required to cool the buildings. We need to do everything we can to save the earth for our children, now. If we wait for perfect solutions, it'll certainly be too late. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sought best.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. My name is Sot Bess, and I'm a 36-year resident of Flagstaff. I want to encourage you to... I want to encourage you to retain the Flagstaff Neutrality Plan as currently written. You have a petition before you from the Flagstaff First Group that would significantly change the priorities of the Carbon Neutrality Plan. It would have the priorities They would prioritize the effects of climate change, fire, flooding, and drought, rather than trying to find ways to reduce carbon emissions. I looked at the Flagstaff First website to try to understand the motive for the change. Under the website's Thinking Smartly About Climate Change, I found an article by Bjorn Lomborg that questions the severity of the climate change crisis. The article states, quote, UN General Secretary Gutierrez and many Western leaders, including the current administration in the U.S., tend toward the end of the world point of view, that the world is facing a grave climate emergency. These claims are echoed endlessly in the media, but are they true, unquote. The article then goes on to make the case that they are not. One of the primary sources cited in the Flagstaff First article is climate economist and Nobel Prize winner William D. Nordhaus, and I read his autobiography from the award ceremony. He seems an unlikely choice for a climate change denial article, but as an economist, he's looking for order and simplicity in a very messy and confusing world, the world of climate change. He proposes a climate club, a coalition of countries, quote, a coalition of countries form a group similar to the EU in which they agree to set a target of a minimum domestic carbon price, let's say $50 per ton. Countries who decline to join the club are penalized with imports into the club. This idea has been around for years. To me, it makes the most sense of any proposal, and I see little likelihood that the club will be formed anytime soon. We're about to hear from COP28, the latest UN climate meeting, which will be attended by climate ministers, but also by oil-producing states like the U.S. and oil and gas companies. It seems that rules with penalties, like what Mr. Nordhaus proposes, are unlikely. This leaves carbon reduction up to you and me and millions of individuals, organizations, companies, and jurisdictions. Mr. Nordhaus ends his autobiography with this statement: "Our futures are not in the stars, but in ourselves. I will not be here in 2100 to witness the results of our efforts. However, my grandchildren are likely to be here with their children and their grandchildren. May they be looking backward with appreciation. I hope that they will say that this generation had the resolve to overcome the obstacles and take the steps necessary to preserve our unique and beautiful planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Roderick Parnell.
Good afternoon. My name is Rod Parnell. I've been a Flagstaff citizen since 1984. I'm a geologist and professor emeritus at Northern Arizona University. My research is focused on the application of geology to sustainable water resources management and decision making, and has produced over 150 peer-reviewed papers. I'm also a senior fellow at the Global Council for Science and the Environment, and for over a decade, I was a water commissioner for the city. I commend the City Council and staff and Flagstaff volunteers in producing an effective and representative carbon neutrality plan. Efforts in the current plan support the 2018 Flagstaff resolution declaring a climate emergency. To effectively mitigate, not just adapt to, the climate crisis, it is critical to follow the approved CNP, how it links to other Flagstaff plans such as water services, how it meshes with NAU's climate action plan, how it links to the county's comprehensive plan and other agency plans. As a sustainability educator, I recognize the fundamental links between environmental and social sustainability. The only sustainable society is a just, equitable, and collaborative one. For example, affordable housing efforts and carbon neutrality measures, such as infill, improved public transportation, smaller houses, more efficient appliances, and so forth, must be integrated across the community and need to be addressed together. I strongly oppose changes to the CNP proposed by the group Flagstaff First. These uncoordinated adaptation, not mitigation activities, will undermine the budget necessary for attaining the net zero carbon emission required and may duplicate or undercut the activities of other agencies and organizations. As its name clearly indicates, the Climate Carbon Neutrality Plan was developed to achieve carbon neutrality for the city by 2030. I urge you to continue to support the existing, well-developed, and widely respected goals and actions within the existing CNP. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay Bordwell.
Good afternoon. My name is Kay Bordwell, and thank you for having the opportunity to speak to you today. I've been an educator for 30 years, and now I donate my time to the Sierra Club, to Northern Arizona Climate Action Alliance, and First Things First. I'd like to thank the City Council for supporting the Carbon Neutrality Plan and share my concern about the changes that are being proposed. The area of concern surrounds the petition that proposes adding and funding top priority areas which can reduce the amount of monies available to support the climate change initiative to become carbon neutral by 2030. Climate change has been documented, and we know that the amount of greenhouse gases that we continue to put in our atmosphere is the leading cause of warming of our planet. There are other entities and plans that are responsible for funding fires and floods in and around our city, and these events will continue to become worse by inaction to reduce CO2 emissions. We have a vision for our city and county. That vision needs to be supported by the actions that we do daily. We can all help. We can reduce our use of fossil fuels and provide ways for citizens to implement the use of emerging technologies use less one-time use of plastics, and be thoughtful about how we build and expand our city, and bolster our goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2030. I urge you to support the goals and vision of the carbon neutrality plan for now, for the future, and for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. William Tyler Head.
So I'll talk to you today about a different subject, but related on a broader field. So thank you, Mayor and City Council, for hearing me today. This week, over 100 member nations to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons are meeting to discuss abolishing nuclear weapons. Additionally, December 10th marks International Human Rights Day. Given these events, I think it's a perfect time for the city of Flagstaff and also the community to show their support on this treaty. And they can do this through what's called the ICANN Cities Appeal. It stands for the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. And it reads as is: our city is deeply concerned about the grave threat that nuclear weapons pose to communities throughout the world. We believe that our residents have the right to live in a world free from this threat. Any use of nuclear weapons, whether deliberate or accidental, would have catastrophic, far-reaching, and long-lasting consequences for the people and the environment. Therefore, we support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and call on our governments to sign and ratify it. So now, that was the city's appeal, and now I present to you a petition of Flagstaff residents who've signed on, showing their support, requesting that you pass a resolution. Furthermore, I hope the city of Flagstaff can join the other 70 cities in the U.S. that have also passed this resolution. And if you would like to learn more about it, I'm more than willing to meet with you and discuss it in detail. As for the community, if you want to show your support, please reach out to the mayor and city council to show your support. That's all I have. Thank you for your time. Who do I turn this petition into? Cool beans.
I haven't heard that expression in a long time.
Cool beans.
Jill Stevenson.
Greetings, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, and everyone in attendance here today. My name is Jill Stevenson, and though I do not have a PhD or I'm not a classroom teacher, I have worked for many years connecting children to nature in the hope that they will enjoy, understand, and protect their natural environment as citizens of this earth. In the 2.5 years since moving to Flagstaff, I have become an active member of Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance. I feel this is the most important work I can do. I'm also a mother and a grandmother, very concerned about the planet we are leaving future generations. Increasingly devastating weather events, drastically warming temperatures, loss of habitat due to human activities, the path to extinction for many species. All these are being caused by our overdependence on fossil fuels, soil-destroying agricultural and mining practices, overuse of chemicals, single-use plastics, destruction of forests and other biomes, and more. We need to clean up our act, and we need to do it now. I have felt so encouraged by Flagstaff's regional plan, especially aimed at achieving carbon neutrality by 2030. This was a definite positive step for a city council to make. I am urging you to keep this goal in mind with every action you take. Will the next proposed project be working towards climate crisis mitigation? Please do not support the Flagstaff First petition, which would bring the carbon neutrality plan to a standstill. Fires, floods, and drought are already being dealt with by various other entities within and outside of Flagstaff. Scientists continue to tell us we are in a climate crisis. This is causing severe problems for all life worldwide. We are driving species to extinction at an alarming rate. Climate migrants are finding they have nowhere to go. Locally, affordable housing is becoming an increasingly vital issue. Clean water access is becoming a life-threatening problem for many people worldwide. Carbon neutrality efforts can help solve these problems, not detract from them. Smaller houses, increasing renewable energy sources, improved public transportation, safer infrastructure to promote more bicycling and walking, encouragement of electric vehicles, energy-efficient homes and buildings, more efficient appliances, reusing goods, eliminating food and water waste. All these need to be addressed by all of us working together towards the goal of carbon neutrality by 2030. We all need to help slow climate change. Thank you, Flagstaff, for taking these steps toward the most important goal of our lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark James.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Mark James. I'm a retired naturopathic doctor and have lived in Flagstaff since 1986. I thank you for this opportunity to speak today, and I thank you for committing this city and yourselves to the critical task of guiding our community into our future. Especially, I thank you for supporting the carbon neutrality plan that has been created to foster a healthier climate future for Flagstaff and beyond. In order to achieve what we have aspired to for our city, we are obliged to act in a forward-moving strategy. We must be clear about the task we have embraced if we are to have a reasonable expectation to arrive at our stated goal. We have chosen to be clear-eyed about the state of the environment, both here and far afield. Flagstaff has committed itself to demonstrating a way that we as a community aspires to, a carbon-neutral future. We have chosen to model what we would have any other community aspire to. If that means we are leaders, then let us lead. And let us do it well. We are open-eyed about the various challenges implied in our resolution, and we are willing to take on what may amount to existential choices to ensure our future, to plan for us to even have a future. This community has demonstrated its will and its ability to devote efforts to respond to our environmental realities. Now we aspire to do more than fill our sandbags with sand. We are poised to thoughtfully strategize and act so we might guide ourselves into the future. Not to do the reverse and to race to the bottom for a short-term gain. And I dare say that only our collaborative actions will make that future possible. The plan by Flagstaff First will dilute and weaken our directive, as outlined by our carbon neutrality plan. If our plan is a bold aspiration, then let us be bold. To this City Council, I say thank you. Thank you for being bold enough to take us into our vision of the future for this city that we deeply care about, that we would be glad to hold up as a model for the state or the country or even for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle James.
Hello, Council and Mayor. Nice to see all of you. As you know, my name is Michelle James, no relation to Mark. I am the Executive Director of F-Cubed. I'm here to speak with you also about F-Cube's concerns related to the recent petition to add 3 specific priorities to the Flagstaff Carbon Neutrality Plan. F-Cube believes these are unnecessary and do not belong within the Carbon Neutrality Plan. Flagstaff's Carbon Neutrality Plan was created as an expansion of the city's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan to address the climate emergency officially declared by City Council in 2020. This plan is award-winning and supported by thousands, many thousands in the community. Past city councils have strongly been supportive of the plan and its implementation, as well as this council. F-Cube and the community thank you for your continued support of the goals of the Carbon Neutrality Plan. While the petition submitted by Flagstaff First may seem innocuous, it is not. It derives from a place of belief that any climate action taken by the city is futile. It is clear to see that. You can see that very clearly on their website. Wildfire, flooding, and drought are examples of the harmful impacts caused by climate change. The city has recognized these for decades, as has the U.S. Forest Service. There are multiple existing jurisdictions in and around Flagstaff that focus directly on mitigating these harmful impacts. The city cannot and should not shoulder the primary cost for forest thinning, prescribed fire, disaster prevention, and flood mitigation. I'm going to ask the individuals in the audience to stand now if they support the Carbon Neutrality Plan in its current form. Lots of people. Thank you. The beliefs of Flagstaff First are a minority and are not based on the understanding of climate science. COP28, the UN's Framework Convention on Climate Change, begins meeting this Thursday to discuss continued global transformation toward a low-emission and climate-resilient world. One of the 4 paradigm shifts that is called for this year is fast-tracking energy transition and slashing emissions before 2030. Another is to put nature, people's lives, and livelihoods in the heart of climate action. The world does not believe it is futile to reduce the emissions that cause climate change. The world believes in climate action, not inaction. The city's carbon neutrality plan has climate action at its core. Previous councils have also supported that action part of the carbon neutrality plan. We urge the council to not change the carbon neutrality plan as requested in the petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Talon Belka.
Hi, I'm Talene Belka, a writer and local DJ here in Flagstaff. While I do some volunteer work for several organizations, mainly the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance, I'm speaking as a member of the Flagstaff community and a citizen of the world. I'd like to begin by recognizing this council for supporting the carbon neutrality plan as it is. I appreciate the work the council has done in reaching the goals laid out in the plan. The path to carbon neutrality will require leadership, bold action, perseverance, and creativity. And I encourage the council to follow the path laid out in the 2020 carbon neutrality plan. As stated in the city's carbon neutrality plan, the reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030 cannot happen with the business as usual emissions. I realize that there are unfunded capital improvements that are waiting funding, but in order to achieve our goals, we must realize that everything else has to take a back seat to the crisis of climate. Important issues such as fires, floods, and droughts have already severely impacted Flagstaff, and if we do not address the root cause of these problems, they will only get worse. The Flagstaff Coconino Regional Plan 2045 update is underway, and it is imperative that the regional plan work from a place that is addressing critical issues. There have been 3 major global reports released this week pointing out the climate is diminishing the quality of life in local communities worldwide. We are in a crisis state when it comes to our climate, and we are all experiencing the change. There's no person or economy that is being left untouched by climate change. I have personally witnessed a situation where millions of dollars were spent to view a glacier attraction, only to see that glacier melt enough so now that it can't even be seen from that visitor center. I do want to say, in my research for the regional plan, I found that climate change is one of the top priorities that people talk about. Before I know we already did this, but again, I will ask that the audience to stand if they support the carbon neutrality plan in its current form, just so we can drive that point home. Stand up, everybody. Thank you. I am proud to live in a city that's taking a leadership role and making a difference locally, regionally, and globally. I would also like to thank the council for being a part of this effort.
Thank you. Robert Brunig. After Robert comes Phoenix Eskridge Aldama.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, and fellow citizens of Flagstaff. I'm here today to speak in support and defense of the city's of Flagstaff's Climate Action Plan, and specifically to the city's goal of carbon neutrality by 2030 as embodied in the current plan. A mere 6 years away. We've all seen the effects of excess carbon in our atmosphere. One has only to pay the slightest attention to the news to learn about the devastating effects of high levels of carbon dioxide and related pollutants in our atmosphere. The extreme temperatures, do you remember Phoenix last summer? Experienced by humanity and all other forms of life last summer here in the Northern Hemisphere and today in the Southern Hemisphere are all a direct result of excess carbon. In 1958, the scientist Charles Keeling began measuring the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere on the Hawaiian mountain of Mauna Loa. At that time, the measurement was 313 parts per million. Today, it is 421 parts per million. Every year, this number has gone up, and every year, it has gotten hotter. This year is the hottest year on record globally. The wildfires, the floods, the droughts that are of concern to all of us today are directly a result of this increase in carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And yet our political and business leaders have let us down by failing to seriously address the root causes of these looming catastrophes. We have delayed and dithered long enough. It is now not the time to declare futility. What if we all said it was just futile and nobody did anything? It is now time for every citizen and every government at every level to take action to collectively address this problem. The City of Flagstaff has boldly stated that as a community we need to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. This is leadership. Now is not the time to abandon and shrink from our community commitment to this urgent, one more word, necessity.
Thank you. Phoenix, and then Kim Curtis.
Hello, my name is Phoenix Eskridge Aldama, and I am a graduate student at NAU. I'm a server at Oregano's Restaurant by Safeway over there, and a passionate supporter of climate change action here in Flagstaff. I would like to first thank the City Council for their work in developing and implementing the Carbon Neutrality Plan, which commits our city to carbon neutrality by 2030. And in order to achieve this critical milestone, we need to be cautious of any groups working to deter us from our sustainable path. With this, I ask the council to not advance the Flagstaff First petition due to its direct implications for our city's carbon footprint. I wish to express my full support for the city's current carbon neutrality plan as it stands without the Flagstaff First Amendment. I am sure that the council members are already well aware of the effects of climate change by now, given that the scientific consensus regarding the dangers of climate change have been well established for many years. I trust that you all listen to the latest scientific findings and that you form sound policy decisions based around them. Though I'm not yet a proper scientist myself, I am pursuing my PhD and currently studying local tactics of obstruction to climate action by interest groups. This petition by Flagstaff First represents the exact kinds of behind-the-scenes, shady dealings that the environmental community is all too familiar with facing from anti-climate, anti-science organizations like Flagstaff First. Trying to portray their anti-environmental rhetoric as conservation-minded is an outright attempt to deceive Flagstaff residents who have already demonstrated time and time again that we care about the climate. It seems that Flagstaff First's main problem with the carbon neutrality plan is concern for business interests. However, I would like to note that the Global Commission on Adaptation has actually estimated that every dollar invested in building climate resilience results in between $2 and $10 in net economic benefits. So that's at least doubling up to 10 times. The Global Commission on Adaptation is guided by 34 commissioners consisting of leaders from political, business, multilateral, and scientific worlds, and it's convened by 20 countries, so it's a reliable source, and you can find more information on the economic benefits of climate action in their report titled Adapt Now, a Global Call for Leadership on Climate Resilience. Anyways, all of us here in Flagstaff have a responsibility to ourselves, our kids, and our grandkids to do our part in fighting climate change. We've already done so much damage, and waiting is not an option. Let's lead the way in climate action as residents of this incredibly beautiful and incredibly vulnerable region. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kim Curtis, and then Sandra Lubarski.
Mayor Daggett and members of council. My name is Kim Curtis. I'm a retired faculty from the Sustainable Communities program at NAU. I was unable to be here on October 17th when you heard the petition from Flagstaff First, and 4 of you voted to move it forward. I want to explain why I would have encouraged you not to do that. Our carbon neutrality plan is laser focused on how our community can cut our greenhouse gas emissions to stay in line with reduction goals of the Paris Climate Accords. In developing this plan, we have done a beautiful thing. And by we, I mean you and the elected councils before you, dozens, perhaps hundreds of city staff and thousands of members of this community who have served on commissions, showed up to city council meetings, written, spoken, argued, gathered signatures. I am so grateful to live in a community with the courageous clear-sightedness to know that protection lies in doing our part as mightily as we can to curtail our carbon emissions, to reduce our energy consumption, and to transition to renewable sources. Thank you for your part in this. Don't undo this beautiful thing. Why do I fear this? Flagstaff First calls this effort, as others have said, futile. That is their language. It's on their website. Their aim, in my estimation, is to gut the carbon neutrality plan. Why do I say this? First, the carbon neutrality plan already addresses wildland fires, forest health, and water conservation through the lenses of reducing our carbon emissions, because that's its mission. Moreover, addressing the serious threats of fire, flood, and drought has been going on for years and takes multiple jurisdictions and partnerships. This group is barking up the wrong tree. We have to ask, Why aren't they being more constructive? I think you should know that this group's thinking has been shaped by Bjorn Lomborg, who wrote a book called False Alarm: How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, and Fails to Fix the Planet. In his review of Lombard's book, which I am more than happy to share with you, Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel laureate in economics and former chief economist at the World Bank, calls the book a do-nothing approach to the climate crisis. Climate denial takes many forms. Far from futile, the action embodied in the carbon neutrality plan is the very thing we are called to do. It is the work of our times. Please protect it and fund it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Lubarsky and then Brian Bates.
Honored Council, climate change is primarily the consequence of the burning of fossil fuels. That's a fact I believe all of you already know, and I mean no offense in repeating it to you. But it is the fact that we must keep in front of us as we work to develop appropriate responses to the threats posed by climate change. In order to create a healthy and resilient future for our children and generations to come, we need to shift to low-carbon ways of living. The most effective way to do this is to move away from reliance on fossil fuels and toward incorporating renewable energy into the structure of our communities. This is the guiding wisdom of our city's carbon neutrality plan, and I am grateful for the leadership of our councils in adopting this plan. Our Flagstaff Carbon Neutrality Plan focuses on well-documented strategies for reducing reliance on fossil fuels, including clean electricity, public transportation, density and infill, and weatherization of homes and buildings. These strategies will enable us to become more self-sufficient, more resilient, and healthier. Flagstaff's first position is diametrically opposed to electrification. They oppose such common sense things as heat pumps, electrical appliances, and retrofitting homes and businesses. They want you to believe that it's a zero-sum game between becoming less reliant on fossil fuels and addressing the climate-related threats of drought, wildfires, and flooding. I don't know why they are pitting one against the other. I do know that the city needs both. Fortunately, with county, state, and federal agencies, we are addressing the threats posed by fire, drought, and flooding. We pair these efforts with our municipal efforts to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. It makes no sense to keep our foot on the accelerator of fossil fuels, and it makes no sense to reduce the two strategies we now have in place for addressing climate change to one strategy. I urge you to reject the request to alter the climate neutrality plan as it now stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Brian Bates and then Karen Rydell.
Flagstaff residents, mayor, council, I'm Brian Bates, soon to be living at 1514 North Sunset, your next solar Adobe home. I'm an emeritus science professor from Coconino Community College. I hold a master's degree in environmental science, and I've been actively involved in Flagstaff betterment over the past several years. On page 5 of the Flagstaff's Carbon Neutral Plan, CNP, it states, on June 23, 2020, the City Council declared a climate emergency, calling on each of us to do what we can to protect the Earth's diversity of culture and life. On page 103, the CNP restates that emergency declaration, which was prescient in its vision and its plan of action. Now, Flagstaff CNP was visionary then, and it is current now. It provides a rational pathway for Flagstaff to reach its commitment of doing our share to reduce our impacts on our local and regional ecosystems. The CNP was adopted in June 21, making Flagstaff one of the first communities in the nation to commit to healthy ecosystems for future generations.
I respectfully request that each council member and each Flagstaff citizen read the CNP. It's a landmark document laying out a viable plan to meet our commitment to future generations. This commitment reverberates with George Washington's farewell address when he said, "We should not leave to future generations that for which we are responsible." Now, as you deliberate the efficacy of our doing our part in mitigating climate disruption, remember that our current and continued commitment are a beacon that can inspire other communities to also commit and deliver on their goals to reduce carbon dioxide. While the International Climate Commission, COP28, meets in the Middle East, they may find a pathway, but yet lack the resolve to follow through because of competing financial interest. This is why communities and cities must take on the task of climate mitigation, because they are smaller and more effective at achieving goals. I recently read that Mr. Tom Pearson of Flagstaff First spoke to council, and he said, "China isn't reducing their carbon footprint, so why should we?" This ostrich sticking its head in the sand statement clearly indicates that Mr. Pearson does not understand carrying capacity, the ability for ecosystems to absorb and recover from disturbances. It's also a cop-out because the U.S. has the highest level of CO2 emissions per person in history.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Karen Rydell and Jordan DeMaio.
Hello. Hi, my name is Karen Rydell, and I'm here today as a retired college English teacher and a journalist who has lived in Flagstaff for nearly 6 years. Many people have already spoken very eloquently today, and my statement will be brief. First of all, I want to thank you for your support of the carbon neutrality plan. I'm here today to ask for your continued support of the plan by your denial of Flagstaff First's petition. Their proposed amendment would essentially mean the end of the city's carbon neutrality plan. Every day, there is growing, indisputable evidence that the climate crisis is causing more and more natural disasters and is destroying entire ecosystems. Flagstaff should remain a leader in showing other cities how to reduce their carbon output. Flagstaff's future depends on slowing climate change by reducing gas emissions. I'm proud to live in a city that has been a role model and leader in the fight to reduce gas emissions, and I urge you to reject Flagstaff First's proposal and to continue your support for the current carbon neutrality plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan DeMaio and then Liam O'Neill Sarr.
Good afternoon, members of the council. My name is Jordan DeMaio, and I have been an Arizona resident my whole life. I came to Flagstaff to pursue my major of environmental and sustainability studies here at NAU. I am here today because of the current threat to Flagstaff's carbon neutrality plan. When I came to Flagstaff, I was in awe at the many steps Flagstaff has taken towards sustainability. Flagstaff has been used as an example in many of my classes of how our city is working towards a better, more environmentally friendly future. To hear the news of the carbon neutrality plan being at risk, I was shocked. I believe many students at NAU kind of share a similar concern with me. Why make so many amazing steps towards sustainability and environmentally friendly future only to suddenly take steps backwards? I'm tired of going to my classes and hearing the words, "I'm sorry, this was a depressing lesson," because of our climate changing and how the world's looking today. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. So Liam O'Neill Sarr, and then Tim Adelot.
Hi, my name is Liam O'Neill Sarr. I am a student at CCC. I don't necessarily have many qualifications other than being a citizen of Flagstaff and being a person who lives on the earth. But I am here to oppose the amendment to the Flagstaff carbon neutrality plan. So my understanding of what Flagstaff First wants to do is they believe that essentially because the emissions of China are so high and because Flagstaff is a relatively small city, that going carbon neutral is essentially pointless. And I strongly disagree because, yes, China does release more emissions than the United States. And yes, even if Flagstaff were to go completely carbon neutral, it would be just a tiny blip in the amount of carbon emissions in the entire country. But we have to start somewhere. We cannot just sit around and wait for someone else, somewhere else, to start progressing carbon neutrality for us. We have to start here and now, because carbon neutrality is a necessity not just for the future of America, but for the future of life on Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim Adelot, and then Marion Sharp.
Hi, I'm Tim Adelot. I taught for over 30 years in Arizona schools, the last half of that time here in Flagstaff at Coconino High. I've lived here for 25 years. My wife and I have 3 adult children and 4 grandchildren living here too. Climate change is real. Change is too soft a word for it, though. It's instability, disruption, degradation, and we've begun to experience, and I'm afraid it'll get much worse. It's caused by human activities. The best time to do something about it was 30 years ago when climate scientists told us what was happening. World leaders first gathered to discuss it. The next best time to do something about it is now. We have to do what people have done for millennia when their survival was threatened. We have to adapt. City Council took an important step in the right direction 2 years ago when it committed to the carbon neutrality plan to cut carbon emissions here in Flagstaff. I wish every city and town and nation would do the same thing. And I certainly wish that the council now not step away from that commitment. I think of what we've done to the climate as being like starting a fire in our backyard without meaning to. Our ancestors didn't know what releasing more and more CO2 into the atmosphere would do. But we don't have that excuse. And to do nothing to change the way we live, the way we travel and produce and consume energy and grow food, that would be like walking or maybe running away from the fire we started and allowing it to spread to our neighbors' homes, throughout our community and beyond. The carbon neutrality plan is a way to stay and fight the spread. It's the honorable thing to do. And it says we care about the future that our children and grandchildren inherit. As I said, I have 4 grandchildren. They may still be living 80 years from now, in the next century. I hope the world then is at least as good a place to live as it is now. I know there are things we can do today and every day to at least slow the amount of climate disruption to come. Please don't allow us to go backward. Please don't abandon or dilute the carbon neutrality plan.
Thank you. Marion Sharp, and then Jason Kordosley, or Kordosky.
Good afternoon, all, and my respects to Madam Mayor and the Council. My name is Marianne Sharp, and I've called Flagstaff home since 1980. I'm a small business owner, co-founder of a local and national environmental consulting firm, a former farmer and avid gardener, and a global citizen who is deeply concerned about the climate crisis facing planet Earth. I'm here today to give voice to my support for the City of Flagstaff's existing carbon neutrality plan. I wish to thank those far-sighted council members and staff who've been instrumental in the creation and inclusion of these belated but necessary steps to buffer our city from the effects of climate change and to do our part as a community in mitigating the global effects of greenhouse gases. I think it's important to remind everyone here that this very moment is the moment that we are creating the future that our grandchildren's children will inherit. We create all of our tomorrows with the decisions we make today. Those children of the future will not thank us for dragging our feet or refusing to take action on rising temperatures, rising seas, and an increasingly dangerously unlivable Earth. If we do not take action, who will? The city's carbon neutrality plan was created with community involvement. It was the result of input from thousands of Flagstaff residents. The people have already spoken and given their support for this plan. I do hope and encourage you City Council members to stay the course, stick to the plan, and ensure that Flagstaff reaches our goal of a 44% reduction of carbon emissions by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Kordosky, and then Anthony Underwood.
Good afternoon, Mayor Daggett, Vice Mayor Aslan, Council members Matthews, House, McCarthy, Harris, and Sweet. My name is Jason Kordosky, and I'm an NAU graduate, a member of the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance, and a nonprofit worker in the community who cares deeply about many issues. I care most about climate change, and I know that reducing carbon emissions to net zero is a crucial component to slowing the climate crisis that is largely caused by humans taking hydrocarbons out of the ground and putting them in the air. I want to thank you for your previous work supporting the carbon neutrality plan and its goal for the city to be carbon neutral by 2030. I am here today to urge you to not advance the Flagstaff First petition because it will undermine the carbon neutrality plan. The climate crisis is causing record climate disasters, including fire, flood, and drought in our own community. The way to mitigate those disasters, the way to mitigate those in the carbon neutrality plan is to reduce the carbon emissions to net zero. There are other entities that already plan and fund for these disastrous events in our community, and repeating these efforts at the city would be a waste of resources. Preserving the carbon neutrality plan in its current form and voting no to advancing the Flagstaff First petition will allow the city to continue its efforts toward being carbon neutral by 2030 and goes hand in hand with sustainable development models, such as expanding residential infill and providing free public transportation. We, the people before you today, are your inspiration and support to vote against advancing the Flagstaff First petition. Thank you again for your dutiful work on making sure our city reaches its goal of being net zero by 2030. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Anthony Underwood.
Greetings, City Council. Thank you for hearing me. I want to get straight to the point because I'm scared. The climate crisis absolutely terrifies me, and growing up in Arizona and having lived in Flagstaff for the past 5 years, receiving my bachelor's in physics and education, I have seen its effects firsthand. I have felt my skin seared by the record highs set every year. I have swum in pools knowing our water reservoirs are getting lower than ever. I have watched the resilient plant life of the desert wilt and die from drought, and I have watched as the snow has diminished each year I have lived here. Despite this, I maintain an optimistic perspective because of actions such as the carbon neutrality plan by the city of Flagstaff. However, though, what causes me and many of my generation an apocalyptic anxiety is hearing the words of groups such as Flagstaff First. We hear people cry that it is futile to try and stop climate change, that the best we can do is simply buy ourselves more time before the end. But in giving to that nihilistic view, we will doom ourselves. Allow me to put this simply, we are all going to die if we do not take responsibility, including the city of Flagstaff. I refuse to go gently in what can evolve into the death of my generation and all of humanity. I beg the City Council to not alter its already existing plans towards carbon neutrality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we have some online commenters as well.
Mayor, I have one. Alexander Shankin, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute. You can also turn your camera on if you'd like, and you can give your comments.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm an assistant research professor here at Northern Arizona University, and I live in Ponderosa Trails. And I'm quite concerned about what's going on with the proposed amendment to the CMP. I'd like to start by noting that there's a difference between carbon mitigation, which is the reduction of emissions and the increasing of carbon sinks, and climate adaptation, which is more dealing with the consequences of climate change. So adaptation would include adapted fire management plans, dealing with drought, and so on. So we need both mitigation and adaptation, of course, but mitigation is a much harder lift to communicate than adaptation. Global carbon budgets and the role of a city in it, that's so much harder to communicate than the benefits of managing fires and droughts. But the good news is that we're there. We have a mitigation plan. We should be proud, and we can serve as an example. It's my understanding that the proposed amendment to the CMP would shift funds from mitigation to adaptation. We should keep the CMP as it currently stands and not water it down. We've done the hard work. The City Council has done the hard work. The folks proposing this amendment blame other countries. There's a theory out there called the tragedy of the commons that was popularized by Garrett Hardin in 1968, originally proposed by William Lloyd, who was an English economist in 1833. This theory posits that when a good is owned collectively, like our atmosphere or a communal cow pasture in 19th century England, we're doomed to ruin and overexploit it because we will all act selfishly to extract as much as we can as fast as we can. So I want to ask you, is that our worldview? In fact, this is an old theory that overlooks the potential and indeed the fact of a multitude of cases of successful management of common resources. But Flagstaff First is running headfirst into the tragedy by calling the CMP futile because our contribution is so small. Well, Flagstaff is small. How would we make a bigger contribution than that? And what do we tell our children when they say that throwing one little thing out the window won't make a difference? We say, what would happen if everyone littered, right? So shall Flagstaff act the child and go ahead and litter anyway? I'd prefer not. Elinor Ostrom, who won the Nobel Prize in 2009, identified several design principles that resulted in successful management of shared resources. These principles include collective choice, Flagstaff has already chosen the CMP, and nested governance. So that's Flagstaff within Arizona, within the US, and so on. Flagstaff plays a critical part of this multi-tiered approach.
Thank you so much. Your time is up, but thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, that is the last comment I have of public participation. So thank you all for coming this evening and providing such thoughtful comments. And we are going to move down now to item number 7. Actually, I'll give you a couple of minutes if you want to leave. You're welcome to stay, but I know that probably some of you want to leave.
Is she okay?
Okay, moving on along. If you could exit the room quietly, please. Item number 7 is the city manager report. What's that? Wait a minute. I don't know what. My laptop just went, whoa. Oh, yes. Thank you, Councilmember House. We are on item 6, review of draft agenda for the December 5th, 2023 City Council meeting. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about the agenda? Seeing none, now we are on number 7, City Manager report. City Manager, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. If you ever want to clear the council chambers quickly, just bring up the City Manager's report. Watch the magic. I will touch on a few things, but I want to start in this report with an introduction of somebody who has come back to this city to help us. Allison Eckert was the interim Human Resource Director years ago. And we have once again looked to her for her expertise in filling that void that has recently been created. She has come back as kind of in a consultant capacity as interim and has hit the ground running. I think she's either here in person or virtually, and I'd like to have her come on the screen, but I have in front of you, if we can enlarge that a bit, her bio, which is very impressive. And I'm not going to read it to you, but would certainly encourage you to take a look at the credentials that Allison brings to the table. And she is here, and I want to thank her for being here in person. Allison, it's great to have you back in the organization, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back. Mayor Daggett, members of the council, I'm super happy to be back. I've been having the opportunity to see all the people that I knew from a few years ago, and I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of the people that weren't here a few years ago, and I'm here to help. My goal for this time that I'm here is to help given the very difficult circumstances that the team has been placed in, and I'm looking to support the team, the HR team as best I can, and also make sure that the progress on all of the important initiatives that both the HR team and the city staff are working on continue to move forward. Thank you for having me.
Welcome back, and thank you. And thank you to the whole HR team for just being champions.
They are great. They're really great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. They are indeed champions. Thank you very much. Moving on, you'll have some updates here from both PROS and Economic Vitality. Look forward to that. That'll be at the end of my report, and this will be pretty brief. I want to skip now to our fire department and note a couple of things here that are noteworthy. Earl Gutierrez was recognized as Firefighter of the Year at the Exchange Club. You have a photo of him and his colleagues, our fire department leadership. Congratulations to Earl for that prestigious award. Also, congrats to Sean Connolly on his promotion to Fire Engineer Paramedic, Christopher Denham on his promotion to Fire Captain, and Derek Sussman on his promotion to Fire Engineer. Related, we have an upcoming graduation ceremony from the Greater Flagstaff Region Firefighter Recruit Academy. That's a mouthful. That is occurring this Friday at 4 p.m. I mentioned that, and I've pasted a little excerpt from the notice there. These are always great events to attend. Usually it's very crowded in here, and we look forward to this event on Friday. We'd love to have you there, Council, if you can make it. Moving on to our police department, congratulations to Colton Hutchinson on his promotion to Sergeant. And again, coming from the Exchange Club, we'd like to recognize Chris Pinella who was awarded as Police Department Officer of the Year. Nicely done and well deserved. Moving on to Public Works, Sam Beckett earned the Arizona Qualifications System Gold Card and is now a credentialed operations section chief. Way to go, Mr. Beckett. Want to make note here of the Hazardous Products Center, which worked in tandem with our sustainability division for a drop-off event in the collection of household hazardous electronic and universal waste. This is a very important event and was well utilized, and you have some numbers in there to take a look at it. Thank you very much for all those who were involved. We had a wonderful visit with our neighbors in the Hopi tribe, and that occurred on November 13th. We traveled to meet with the Hopi Tribal Council to discuss opportunities for collaboration and to give them some updates on matters that are happening here in the city involving our indigenous community. It was a wonderful visit, and again, that occurred a couple of weeks ago, and we look forward to a similar visit with Navajo Nation coming up. There's a tidbit in the report on that for you. I pasted some white paper points on the tribal leadership and the tribal governance that's in place for your interest and enjoyment. We had an alliance meeting on November 17th. Thank you for those who attended. And something here that is also noteworthy, the United Way of Northern Arizona, UWNA fundraising campaign at the city level at least has come to closure, and we did quite well this year. The effort was very successful. I excerpted a email from Christine Pierce with United Way to Heidi Hansen, our Economic Vitality Director, who, by the way, exercised a lot of leadership in this endeavor. She was at the helm, and you know Heidi, she's a go-getter, and we did quite well with this fundraising. And thank you, Heidi, and thank you to the team that helped make this a reality. And the numbers are there on our campaign outcomes. You can enjoy that. Thank you. Reminder of our...
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
How many employees total do we have?
Well, we have... You're going to have to enlarge that, Steve.
I'm at 200%.
Yeah, we'll go to 300%. Let's see what happens.
760.
Yeah.
So that's the total number we have?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that might be a little bit shy, but I think that's a good number to use. And so we had a great participation rate out of that. Thank you. Budget retreat coming up on December 14th. We will have details and agenda for you, working on that, and it will be facilitated. I think with that, Mayor, Council, I will conclude my part of the report and invite, I think we have Heidi is up first to give you an update on economic vitality. Thank you.
Is that good? I think it's pretty. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. Heidi Hansen, Economic Vitality Director. I agree with Greg that we had good participation with United Way, but if anyone has forgotten to donate, it is Giving Tuesday, so there's still time. I'm going to go over some of our successes in October, and I will let you know that it will seem ironic, but I have cut this down. I've actually deleted some things because our report's always pretty full. So I wanted to let you know that our ARF staff, they do all duties assigned. And so this past month when the Vice President came in, flew into the airport, they were there to greet them and the Secret Service. And they actually worked with Secret Service and APS to make sure that everything would come off great, and then there were still problems. So anyway, no problems at the airport, but just little quirks that kind of kept her on the plane a little longer than necessary. But she did get to her meetings, and I think some of you actually got to meet her and be part of that. We also, in talking about the airport, I'm going to use this, it's easier. We are working on getting ready for the snow. And so I think you realized some years ago we got amazing snow equipment, and the team is all up to speed on how to use that snow equipment. Last year we had the biggest snowfall that we've had in years, and they basically never had to shut down the airport except for, I believe, one time for not being able to get the runway at the level that it needed to be. So hats off to the team, and they're gearing up for that again this year. I wanted to let you know we continue to do our advertising for the airport. We do outward advertising, inward advertising to get people to fly Flagstaff first. We are going to be celebrating the 75th anniversary. I hope that you're joining us on Wednesday, and Mayor, you have to be there because you're speaking. So we have you all ready. We are working on air service attraction. We had a conference in Lexington, Kentucky. Our airport communications manager, Claire Harper, goes to everything, and she got us an appointment today with United Airlines, and we spoke to a planner about service to Denver again. And in all honesty, they said the soonest we could probably get that would be in 2025. They have actually ordered 700 to 1,000 new planes. They're also trying to get officers, first officers that, sit on the right side of the plane to get into the captain's side of the plane. So they're getting there. But the point is we're getting meetings. So that's exciting. We'll continue to update you on our efforts. As far as projects and grant updates, it's insane what's going on out there. And we're trying to spend all the CARES money. We had received $18.1 million. We had terminal roof repairs, office carpet replacements, concrete column maintenance, concrete sidewalk replacements, signage, terminal doorway replacement, and then apron markings refreshing. We're also going to do perimeter fence maintenance, terminal fire sprinkler construction, and terminal lighting replacement, and flooring. And what you're going to probably see at the airport is we're not going to have carpet anymore. We're going to be doing something else that's a little bit more useful to us. When people basically drop things, they don't tend to clean up after themselves. So we're going to make it so it looks better in the airport. Again, I hope you join us at 4 for the event, the 75th anniversary at the airport. Our employments are doing fine. We were almost at 8,000. This is pretty good for only having American Airlines and having Phoenix and Dallas routes. So we're doing a good job. This is a really cool mural. I don't know that you've seen it, but it's actually on the Sustainability Department's building. And so we have BIA grants, Beautification and Action grants, and I will tell you, I hope that you go by and look at this, but it's about the native pollinator species. So I hope you'll look at that. The fencing over at the airport that we did, the beautiful fencing project, still has to have medallions reset, so we're working on those. We've actually made them larger. And then I don't know if some of you were able to come out to the Cosmic Ray Tunnel celebration. Pretty cool. We're actually going to be working on some other plaques for the entrance and the exit of that tunnel. The spruce trees have arrived in downtown, and that's replacing all of the beautiful flowers that we had. And don't worry, they will be lit. And I'm sorry if my scrolling is making you sick, but there's a lot. NAU and ASU interviewed us, and they wanted to know about our traffic signal cabinet project. So if anyone says, why are they wrapping traffic signal cabinets? It's because it's cool, and it's because it gets our local artists a way to get out and to show their art. We're going to be doing a lot more. I just had a meeting with agendaq, and we're preparing for the 100th, the centennial for the Route 66, and you will be seeing a lot more along the longest stretch of Route 66 than you've ever seen before, and agendaq is hopefully going to partner a lot with us. We've also talked to them about actually taking over some of their traffic signal boxes for good. So more on that as well. Our park flag team does not have a glorious job. I will tell you, if you see them, please thank them every single day. They are not only being great ambassadors and doing more ambassadorship than citation, they are actually cleaning up the graffiti on these kiosks, which is not an easy task. And they're also repairing signage that people like to destroy, things like that. So again, really appreciate their work. And our revenues were up in October, which is terrific to see, which means people are actually paying for their parking. Right? All right, because we all know, what do we know? Thank you. All right, there we go. We had it's working. It's working. Jack Fitchett just left us. He was our business attraction manager, and he went to have a promotion in Winslow. So you can't help but somebody that has a deep desire for career advancement, but he is still a partner to us and to Acona. But before he left, he actually had a site tour for a manufacturing company that he says creates wood and cement products. Their process focuses on taking small diameter timber and adding concrete to produce panels for affordable housing. Now, that's pretty exciting stuff. I don't know any more than that, and I'm not allowed to tell you anything because it's still very confidential. So, as we know more, you will know more. And we also had we hooked up our water services department with Restoration Soils. Thank you, Councilmember Sweet, for that. We'll come back to you on that. They're talking about materials from wastewater processing. And then we also had Manufacturer Month tours that also included Acona. They're always setting things up for us. Library is continuing to grow. I just wanted to show you two figures. There's a lot of figures on here, but two that I'm really proud of are the number of programs that they were able to put out for our community. It's a 47% increase, and the attendance is 190% increase. So I think it tells you that the library is definitely a place people want to gather. Linda Tilson, you've all met her before. She's actually making her rounds to all the county libraries, and she went to Forest Lakes Library this past month. Our senior book club, Thursday night book club, and our senior coffee hour are incredibly popular. And what's great is our Friends of Flagstaff Foundation, all the things that they asked for, they're getting granted. So we are going to have some other programs that get implemented. They had their final Meet Us at the Trailhead program, which 37 people had joined, and they're going to bring that back next year. And then we always have these awesome people that say, you know, how helpful it was to use the computers at the library, and believe it or not, they're used all the time. Last but not least, tourism visitor services, occupancy at average daily rate and RevPAR, amazing. Occupancy up 2.1%, average daily rate 2.9, and RevPAR 5.0, which means that not only did we fill rooms, we drove rate, which is always important for our hoteliers to actually remain productive. Marketing and media relations, the most visited thing on our website was the leafometer. People like to leaf peep, and they don't want to come up here if they don't think the leaves are changing. So they take a look at that meter, and they make sure that it's the right time to come up. Our Trail Passport had a 16% gain, and we also had, not only did we have leaf peeping, we also had some other stories on colorful places to go for the outdoors and things like that. I wanted to thank Vice Mayor Aslan for attending the film festival with Lori Pappas, our marketing media relations manager. Looked like he had some good appointments, and we're getting the word out that we have a film tax incentive in Arizona. We also had 3 permits that were issued for some things that people wanted to shoot in town. And it's kind of fun, the little things that they want to shoot. They'll do running shoots for Hoka, running shoes, things like that. And they just want a little bit of time here, and that's it. But it makes a big impression. Website is doing great. I am going to move along. Our top performing landing page is Plan Your Trip. And again, it was the leafometer. Our email campaigns are going well. Flagstaff Local, My Actions Matter, still incredibly important to this community. Social media is doing great. And we actually had Billy Gibbons from the ZZ Top Band come into Arizona Music Pro. And Arizona Music Pro is so cool, they told us, so that we were able to get him into a social post. And it was the biggest hit social post that we had in October. So we appreciate when people tell us what's happening in town. We also did the haunted tours and things like that. We had a huge global travel trade conference in the UK in London, and 35 appointments. And I will tell you, we have people already scheduling their trips and their tours for Flagstaff. We also did some familiarization tours where we took them around, which was awesome. And then we had some leads sent out from our meetings, an events person with 150 rooms that were booked. Our visitor center continues to get a major increase in retail sales, and then walk-ins was about flat, but that was great.
They love the retail. If you haven't been in the visitor center, you should go there shopping this holiday season. And then the last thing is our Crave services. We couldn't do anything without them. They're amazing. They not only support Discover Flagstaff, but they support all of the city. And we have a really fun Santa video. If you haven't seen it, I'll send it your way, that we did to show overnight stays and all of that. And then, of course, we did working on our winter stay and play insert. I just saw it today. It's completed. So if anybody has any changes, sorry, I cannot. And it's done. And then our annual report came out, and some of you had come to our annual meeting, which I will actually talk about next month. But if you were at the annual meeting, I appreciate your support, but you also got the report at that time. And so it tells about all the wonderful things we did. And here's just a little bit of the artwork that's happening right now, talking about Snowball. And then, of course, we're doing collages to talk about all things holiday. I am so sorry I can never keep that under 5 minutes, but I think you understand why. So any questions for me?
It's Greg Clifton that makes you do under 5 minutes.
They don't even care, Greg. Look at
Yeah, you can go on as long as you like. I think Councilmember
You
House.
all heard it right
Councilmember House has a statement, question, something.
Yes.
Just two questions and a thought. So for the park flag kiosk, I was just wondering if you've had any consideration of making those some sort of art or beautification project?
It's a fabulous idea, and we have not. We have some spaces on there that we could definitely wrap. But we need to keep the front, of course, available for all the messaging. But I'll definitely look into that. And I am coming back to you on Green Book. I swear to you, we have a meeting this month. I don't want you to think I forgot that.
I actually was not going to ask about that today. But my second question was really just how do you get on the list for that next trip to London?
Just so you know, you're always invited. We have money that we set aside for administration and council to attend with us, because the best way for you to understand our jobs and what we do to try to drive visitation is for you to attend with us. So if you ever want to participate on a travel trade mission or whatever, Trace and Meg Roeder are out now. They're in France, and they're in a travel trade mission. I will tell you, it sounds like a lot of super fun, but they will make you work. I mean, they're always in meetings, and when you have appointment after appointment, it's a lot of speed dating. But if you ever want to attend with us and you have the availability, we can show you our schedule.
Anything else, Council?
Just real fast, Madam Mayor. Heidi, thank you. I'm so glad you had a chance to go into more depth with that. This is the report we got, of course, at the last Tourism Commission meeting, and I did an abysmal job of summarizing all of that during the liaison reports last week. Obviously, it's a little bit overwhelming. It's a bit of a fire hose. You guys are so busy and working so hard. We do see the benefits coming through. And it's nice for you to be able to toot your own horn and get that narrative out there and tell that story, because we need to hear it. So thank you, and I apologize for doing all of that in about 14 seconds instead of 5 minutes last week.
Please do not apologize, Vice Mayor. And last thing I forgot to mention was Vice Mayor and Councilmember Sweet were able to join us at the Visitor Center to look at our sustainable interactive wall. It is so cool. And if you have some time to go into the Visitor Center, please do some holiday shopping. We do not carry products that take you away from shopping in our other area shops. We make clear that that does not happen. And second, we'd love for you to interact with that board. It's really cool, and we might find a reason to put it some other places. And I know that was a comment from Vice Mayor and Councilmember Sweet that these boards probably need to go in other areas, and we'll talk about that during the budget time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Back to you, Mr. Clifton.
Thank you, and I'm going to bounce it off to Rebecca for the pros update.
Oh my gosh, she is always a tough act to follow. Let's see if this will work. All right. Can everyone see that okay? Okay. So thank you, Heidi, for making it difficult to follow you, but we've also had a great time. This is the Parks, Rec, Open Space, and Events monthly report for October. I believe I mentioned to you the last time I was here that we had just had our kind of annual get-together and gathering, and City Manager Clifton and Deputy City Manager Shannon Anderson were able to come out and join us for a little bit and interact with the team. It was a great time. This is a photo of that, so you can see. We cooked for them and really just gave them the afternoon off to enjoy each other's company and relax a little bit. The excitement of Name That Plow contest is, this has been impressive. This was a new endeavor for us. It was a social media campaign. It concluded, and we are going to tell you the names of the plows tonight, and I'm going to have Amy do that in a little bit. So we're building the suspense. Beat that, Heidi. All right, our trail counters are still popular. We're seeing increases, at least in October we did. Buffalo, Sinclair, and Mars Hill all saw, yep, I got those right, all saw 15% increases in usage in October. Some of our projects in parks are not super sexy, but they mean a lot to our coworkers. And they were finally able, this was a project needed for, I can't even tell you how many years, a new gate, an automated gate, so that we can fully secure the parks yard at night, and that they can come in and open up that gate before it was literally someone trying to drag that thing across the ground. So this is a new project. Many thanks to Sean Mullaney. He's one of our park supervisors that got this project done for us. It was also Halloween, of course, so recreation centers were in full swing. These pictures are from the Halloween party at Hal Jensen Recreation Center. They had an old-fashioned cakewalk, which turns out to be one of the more popular events that they have there. And you can just see they had arts and crafts, they had goodies, and it really brings in the neighborhood. It's really fun to see. In open space, we continue a lot of work for education and partnering with different organizations like Boys and Girls Club and high school classes. We are continuing with our full moon hikes. I'll let you know, they went out last night when it was freezing last night, right? And we still had people come out and join us for a full moon hike. So they're going strong. Adult athletics are going strong. Again, this was dated back in October, so adult basketball registration is now closed, but we'll probably be, or not probably, we will be starting up registration for the second session. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out. Final reminder, I promised Haley I would do this. I would remind you all that you are invited to join us for the Winter Wonderland and tree lighting. You all are the VIPs of the evening. You're invited. Please, if you're joining us, be at the City Hall parking lot at 5:45, and the truck will be taking off at 6 with or without you. But of course, we're planning lots of other activities with our downtown Flagstaff DBA, Downtown Business Association partners, working on, and all of the permits for events that go on, like the Holiday Light Parade, happening as well. So those are listed here, and without further ado, I think I'm going to have Amy come up and talk about snowplow names.
Heidi, maybe we could name the parking kiosks downtown?
We don't need to compete.
Nah.
No, this is our thing.
Not nearly as fun as this. All right. So, of course, I was going to kick this off with, did you know that pros held a Name That Plow contest? Okay. Well, we did. We surely did. There were over 500 submissions from the community. Awesome. There were a little over 300 different
name submissions, so certainly some duplicates. So we went through, we were able to condense. And then what the heck did the team do next? So we gathered, we had our parks manager, we had our 4 park supervisors, our brand new park ranger who just started this week, who is probably wondering what in the world do we do with our time? And of course, our events and marketing supervisor, Haley Reynolds, and Rebecca and myself. So we sat down with this list and we went through what were the most popular to name. We have 7 plows on our fleet, on our pickup trucks. And then we also want to name 2 of our specialty equipment. So you ready for the top 5? Can I engage some city staff back there? Because I feel like it's a little bit like a David Letterman show a little bit. Can I get some cheers, some crowd noise? Okay, coming in hot is the Rhinestone Plowboy. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. We also have Edward Blizzard Hands. Yep, another good one. We have Darth Blader. And I think that one's going to be busy at the helm. Ha 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 ha. We have Dwight D. Eisenplower, which will certainly take the lead, I'm sure, in any of these snow operations. And, you know, I almost feel like this one is set up for me to goof up, so I'm going to try my best not to goof up. We have Holy Sleet. Super clever and definitely my style. Those are our top 5, so we can look forward to the plows themselves. We'll have a naming mechanism on them following this, plus a few other surprise ones out there. And our team hopes to engage with the community through social media. You know, for example, did you know that Darth Blader plowed XYZ amount of miles of the urban trail today or during this snow event? So we hope to have a lot of fun with it with the community too. Any questions? Thank you. Did I beat Heidi Hansen? I knew it.
Questions or comments for staff?
I just want to,
Go ahead.
I just want to say that was when I read it, I was like, that's amazing. That's fantastic. And I'm not surprised to hear that over 500 entries, because people really do like that kind of stuff. So thank you so much. That was great.
They do. Thank you.
Can't top that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
and
Mayor.
thank you for the great update, staff. All right. We are moving down to item number 8, ECONA, an economic development roadmap for Northern Arizona. And thank you for being so patient.
I think we're into the evening. So good evening, Mayor and council members. I am Gail Jackson. I am the president and CEO of ECONA. And tonight, we are here to hear from our consultants that we hired for a strategic plan. It's the first ever strategic plan that's been done for our organization. So for those of you who don't know, or the public, I thought I'd share a little bit about what ECONA is, and we'll go from there. So ECONA is the premier regional economic development organization supported by a multitude of agencies in Arizona. We coordinate regional efforts of private, public, and nonprofit organizations that are working to improve the economic vitality in Northern Arizona. Our vision: Northern Arizona will be recognized as a premier business destination and will become a top-performing economy in the state of Arizona. Business partners will work diligently to excel in job creation, innovation, entrepreneurship, global business, and quality workforce development in order to grow and sustain a stable, business-friendly environment. Our mission is quite simple. With our partners, we provide quality economic growth for Northern Arizona. So as I mentioned, I started at ECONA back in 2019, just months before the pandemic hit. And so one of my goals was to create an economic development plan, but first we needed to establish our region. ECONA has been focused on the I-40 corridor since it came to be in 2008. So Winslow to Williams. We added Sedona and Camp Verde during that short time because we recognize that the workforce is traveling from there, and there's a lot of similarities with those two cities. As our mission suggests, with our partners, we put out a bid for a 5-year economic development strategic plan and had several businesses come and present to us. But there was one clear winner after all of the interviews, and that was Elliott Pollock and Company and IO Inc. So I'd like to introduce them now. They put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and I want to thank them for their patience tonight. Thank you. So Elliott D. Pollock and Company is headed by one of Arizona's most noted economists and offers a broad range of economic and real estate consulting services backed by the most comprehensive database found in Arizona. Danny Court is a partner and senior economist with Elliott D. Pollock and Company. Mr. Court has been involved in many aspects of economic development, real estate consulting, economic and fiscal impact analysis, economic consulting, litigation support. There really isn't anything Danny can't do. He has partnered with IO Inc.'s president, Dr. Ioana Morphosis. They've worked together for over 15 years. She has focused her professional life on helping communities and companies thrive and succeed. She founded 3 best-of-class economic development organizations in the U.S., including the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. She's also a founding board member of the Helios Education Foundation, one of the largest education foundations in the U.S. So now that I've read their description, I'm hoping that I can just quickly, while I have the mic, recognize some of our board members that are here in the audience today. Mayor Becky Daggett, Greg Clifton, City Manager, Heidi Hansen, the Economic Vitality Director. They all represent the City of Flagstaff on our board. We also have Steve Ice with Northern Arizona Healthcare, and our board chair, Mr. Josh Mayer with NAU. And online, we have Randy McGrain with Ensemble Investments. We also have members of our leadership teams that are here, Miss Alexis Knapp with Coconino Community College, Dave McIntyre with the City of Flagstaff, Allie Applin, and Janet Dean with APS. So I wanted to thank them because they too were patient and have been waiting here as we start this presentation. So thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it over to Danny and Ioana.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present our Economic Development Strategic Plan presentation. This is just a very brief summary. There are over 200 pages of research and documentation that is available on the Icona website. There's also several webinars that do a deep dive into several of the technical reports that we completed for Icona. So we want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So we're going to kind of go rapid fire through this. You can go to the next slide. I believe Gail did a wonderful job of introducing the combined team of Elliott D. Pollock and Company and EO Inc. I just wanted to, I think you covered me just fine. I just wanted to brag a little bit more about Dr. Morphosis. This is a world-renowned economic development professional and executive, founding CEO of GPEC, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, has successfully brought in over 300 business locations, 200,000 new jobs, $30 billion of private capital investment. So it definitely somebody that you want on your side in terms of economic development. And we will have her go over some of the things in the report, including the SWOT analysis. I just wanted to quickly say, too, that there's a timestamp on this report. Most of this is timestamped as of June of 2023, and we began our efforts last fall in terms of stakeholder engagement. So just to kind of set the time frame there. So you can go to the next slide. This was the scope was quite extensive for the economic development strategy, so we got to a lot of different things in terms of what the region needs in terms of economic development. It included an extensive literature review, extensive stakeholder engagement. Over 80 individuals and groups were contacted and interviewed. An asset inventory of current conditions, a competitiveness analysis, a targeted sector analysis. We get into housing, the labor shed, and what is your true regional labor force availability, programs and resources, and then we conclude with an action plan, target dates, metrics, all of that. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So again, real quickly, and again, this was done for the entire Econa region and representative municipalities, but to the extent we could, we're highlighting Flagstaff's portion in each of these metrics. The population change historically, about 1.5% annual growth. That's pretty much on par with the state and Greater Phoenix historically. But we'll show you kind of future growth, which is of a very high concern in terms of this plan. The next slide. This is what we're talking about is, you saw about 12,000 residents join Flagstaff over the last 12 years, and only less than 11,000 additional residents expected over the next 20 years, which is basically a build-out scenario. And beyond 2040, actually showing population declines. So very troubling in terms of trying to build an economy, grow a workforce, and keep the economy running. So, but we will touch on that throughout the presentation. Household income very quickly, and this dovetails really well into the housing discussion. The chart on the left shows the percent of residents below poverty, which at Flagstaff is one of the lowest in the region at 17.4%, but still. That's still an elevated level when you compare it to the state of Arizona at 12.5% or Greater Phoenix at under 11%. But as a region, Flagstaff is at the lower end of those individuals at or below poverty. You'll see, I'll just draw your attention at the bottom, which dovetails into the housing. The median household income of a homeowner is $97,000, and the median income of a renter is $44,000. Really interesting when you look at housing sales and prices as well as rent. Most of those homeowners actually couldn't afford to buy the house that they currently live in, and we'll show you some of those stats. But you can go to the next slide. This is the county's employment, top 5 sectors, not surprising, accommodation and food services, healthcare, education, retail, and manufacturing, which is an excellent industry to have in your top 5. Next slide drills down into the city level. You see here, anything with a red box means that industry is more represented than if you looked at the statewide average. So Flagstaff, again, very well represented in manufacturing, educational services, healthcare, and accommodation food services, which is tied to tourism. Go to the next slide. This is a technical report. Again, you can see we do have additional presentations and reports on this, but the competitor regions that were chosen were Fort Collins, Colorado, Bozeman, Montana, and St. George, Utah. Again, chosen for similar proximity to major markets as Flagstaff, presence of universities, and then some regions just chose for aspirational, just to see where Econa, the Econa region, stacks up. So you can go to the next slide. These were the factors that were researched, and you go to the next one. We've got just a couple of highlighted charts here. These are just examples. Educational attainment, again, Flagstaff being a university city, stacks up pretty well in terms of its educational attainment, especially with those with bachelor's degree or higher. Still, Fort Collins and Bozeman were outperformed Flagstaff, but Flagstaff did beat out St. George, Utah. And then the chart on the right is just to show you that when looked at as a region and Coconino County chosen as a proxy, it stacks up pretty well against those competitor markets, again, when you look at them as a region. So the next slide is again another about educational attainment. This is where Flagstaff really shines, is those that are enrolled in college or graduate school. So the next slide is just an example of, in terms of economic development, we always want to make improvements where needed and to advertise when we excel. So this is just an example of something that could go on an economic development website in the region, showing, just really highlighting, the college enrollment statistics of the region, that potential pipeline of highly educated workforce that's available if they have a place to live. So next slide. This goes back to the population projections, very concerning for the northern Arizona region, basically flatlining now. Not much growth expected, just very, very modest growth in the next 2 decades compared to these other regions that have pretty healthy growth prospects. Fort Collins was already a more populous region, and they're continuing to grow. They're going to reach nearly 500,000 residents by 2050. Interestingly, St. George had a similar population to Coconino County as of 2010, but has outpaced this region by quite a bit. Now stands at over 180,000 residents, and again is projected to grow tremendously over the next several decades. And even Bozeman, Montana, expected to overcome the population of Coconino County by 2040. You can go to the next slide. In terms of commercial real estate, again, this information may be a bit dated, but the Flagstaff market has very little available commercial real estate for a prospective business that might want to come into an already ready building, very low vacancy, very little office or industrial space available. You have a very small office footprint compared to the competitor markets. And then under construction, about only 82,000 square feet of industrial space was under construction, and nearly all of that was going to be taken down by a single user already spoken for. So definitely a need for more commercial space in the city if you want to attract more industry. And the next slide, quality of life, just another example of Flagstaff excels in terms of low crime rates, both for violent crime and property crime. So definitely should be something at the top of a brochure, is that Flagstaff is a very safe place to live. These next 2 slides, I'll let you just see. These are just all of the combined factors together and how the Econa region stacks up against these competitor markets. Just a very healthy exercise to do from time to time, to understand that you are competing on a national and global level for any targeted sectors that you may be trying to attract. And so each of these factors very important to try to improve upon or market if you're doing well. So you can skip forward 2 slides. The next technical report was a targeted sector analysis. So what are the main industries that we believe the Northern Arizona region should be trying to attract to bolster, basically to leverage its strengths that are that you can mitigate against any weaknesses that you have. The main focus is on what we call base industries, which are export-related industries. These are companies that could locate anywhere they want. They produce either a good or a service locally and export it out so that money comes in. It supports a lot of local businesses, very high multiplier effect. These are typically higher wage jobs, so that can increase the quality of life of residents when they have those high wage jobs. And trying to leverage the asset of Northern Arizona University, which is producing a lot of highly educated graduates. There are also opportunities. There may be opportunities to focus in on local market industries in the case where you need to, if you've got spending leakage that you don't have enough retail assets or something like that. But in this case, the sectors we chose were all base industries. And you can go to the next slide. This recognizes the fact that there's economic development efforts going on at the state level, at the regional level, and to the extent possible, we want to leverage those efforts and align ourselves with those efforts when it makes the most sense for the region. So we looked at the targeted sectors of the Arizona Commerce Authority, the state of Arizona. NACOG has put out its economic development plan with targeted sectors. And then the one in the blue box is the targeted sectors that we derived based on the competitiveness analysis and the economic makeup of the region, as well as from the stakeholder engagement. So the 5 targeted sectors that were chosen were manufacturing, which includes advanced manufacturing, transportation, distribution and logistics, professional, scientific, and business services, the biomedical and healthcare industry, and arts, entertainment, and hospitality, which is tourism. There's a drill down on the next slide that kind of goes into what that could mean, what possible industries that could mean, and I'll let you read those after the presentation. You can read those at your leisure. And just to say, this goes back to, again, the housing and population issue that is in the region. You have these opportunities to go after targeted sectors, but an integral piece of that strategy needs to be a workforce, housing, and population growth strategy along with it. The targeted sector recruitment will have limited success without those as part of the overall strategy. You can go to the next slide.
Danny, before you leave that slide, I would like to share something with the mayor and council. This is not just about recruiting new, high-quality, desirable business. This is just as important. The workforce, housing, and population growth strategy is just as important to enable Flagstaff, especially because that's where most of the employers are concentrated, to retain what you have and enable them to continue to grow and flourish at their current location. So this is not just about targeted sector recruitment. It's just as, if not more important, in terms of being able to retain what you already have as a community. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you for that input. We're just spending one slide real briefly. Again, there's basically a toolkit that's given to each community, which is what is called a labor shed. This is where the pool of most of your workers, and the metric was 70% or more of your workers are coming from not just within your city, but they're coming from throughout the region. And in most parts of rural Arizona, it's true that the commute times are much longer, and people are used to traveling for work, especially if it's a higher wage job. So again, in economic development efforts and just showing to potential new employers, we do not want to be using community level data. We want to be using regional data. So this is supported by the U.S. Census commuting patterns data, as well as GIS drive time models to show that you have a much larger base of workforce in various industries. So even in industries that may not be there locally today that you want to attract, that there is an available and qualified workforce in those industries within a reasonable drive time and commute shed. So that's a toolkit that we've provided. And that's all I have for this slide. You can go to the next one. Housing. So this comes as no surprise. I know the city of Flagstaff has done extensive work on looking at affordable housing and an affordable housing action plan, and that was reviewed as part of this. So these are updated statistics compared to when the housing plan was created. Basically, if you bought a home in Flagstaff before 2018, congratulations. Housing prices, and this is not a Flagstaff only issue, this is across the entire nation. and in other parts of Arizona, but saw a substantial increase in prices since 2018, an 80% increase in the average single-family home price. Now, as of 2022, just under $800,000. And then you add in a 7.25% mortgage interest rate, you're looking at needing a household income of over $200,000 to afford. Not very many salaries offered at that level. So this is an issue across the entire region, where we saw prices increase dramatically. The next slide addresses rents. I mean, pick your poison. In 2018, Flagstaff's average rent for an apartment was just over $1,300, now over $1,800, which if it's going to be affordable, that's a household income of nearly $74,000 to comfortably afford the average rent in the city of Flagstaff. The next slide addresses the gap. I know that gap has been calculated previously by the city of Flagstaff. This is through the U.S. Census. Basically, the chart on the left is those renters that are paying 30% or more, which is the standard HUD definition of affordability. There's 8,500 households paying more that are cost burdened by rent in the city of Flagstaff. That's nearly 60% of all renters in the city. And if we are successful in attracting additional jobs and employers, that means there are going to be more people, and that need will just continue to grow. So the table on the right is employment growth estimates, an employment growth forecast, and to the very right, that would be your annual demand for new affordable housing on top of the affordable housing need that you have today. The next slide just aggregates both owner cost burden and renter cost burden, as well as the 5-year forecast. So Flagstaff's portion of the entire Icona region's housing gap is just over 12,200 units. You can go to the next slide. I'm going to turn the next couple of slides over to Ioana to discuss the stakeholder engagement and SWOT analysis.
Thank you very much. Elliott Pollock and Company really is the gold standard for economic research across a broad range of endeavors, and many cities, including Flagstaff, have utilized their services on economic and fiscal impact analyses, housing studies, feasibility studies, market studies, etc. And I just want you to know that their data that they provide is very trustworthy and is not intended ever to advance any agenda. So the data obviously is critical. Every sound economic development strategy has to be data-driven, but to understand the DNA and really the essence of a community, that comes from engaging with stakeholders. And we want to thank the mayor, council members, staff members of the city of Flagstaff, and from all the communities in the Icona region, and of course, Gail and members of her board for working with us. We conducted, as Danny said, confidential one-on-one interviews. We did an online survey. We did roundtables. We wanted to embrace and integrate as many factions or aspects of the community across the region as possible. So here are the people and the types of people that we did interact with directly for the SWOT analysis. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we organized our SWOT write-up according to 6 categories, all of which are critically important to business retention, entrepreneurship and startups, and business recruitment. And obviously the first category, locational assets and business climate, of which Flagstaff and the region have many. Governance and leadership, increasingly for CEOs as they are making a location decision for a new facility or to expand an existing one, because they want risk minimization. We live in a very dynamic world, hard to predict, but the more stability and predictability they can get, the better off they feel and the higher the comfort level to invest in a certain community. Infrastructure and growth capacity, and that encompasses the ability to grow shovel-ready sites, the transportation infrastructure, broadband, water security, stability, and sustainability. Talent and education and training, number one factor that companies evaluate in terms of labor costs as well as labor availability and skills in a business location evaluation process. Civic community, culture, and quality of life and quality of place, obviously very, very important. What kind of community, what kind of supportive community exists, and then finally, economic development programs and resources. What is the public and private sector doing together to facilitate economic development? How committed is the business community, and just as importantly, how committed is government to economic development? We can go to the next slide, please. So after a gazillion interviews, these were the top 12 strengths that were shared with us. As Danny said, 80 people one-on-one. We actually met with more than that. This is their thinking, not ours. These are their words, not ours. And there's a more detailed report that we shared with Econa, not really for public consumption, but clearly I'm sure if the mayor and council wanted to see it, she would make it available. So obviously the Econa region has a lot of majesty, a lot of beauty, but it also has modern infrastructure and significant economic drivers already in existence. Let's go to the next one, please. The weaknesses. There were a lot, and typically in any SWOT analysis and stakeholder engagement process, mayor and council, people always give you way more weaknesses than strengths. But if you take a look, there are insufficient and adequate workforce and available workers, the accessible and affordable housing, and this would be for not only college graduates and not only mid-level managers and executives, but even senior executives in business sectors that maybe don't pay as much as Zuckerberg makes. Obviously, we did an analysis of all of Arizona Commerce Authority's prospect information forms that they send out to all the communities across the state of the companies that are looking at Arizona. 100% of them last fiscal year, of all the prospects that Arizona Commerce Authority worked with, 100% required site readiness. So what does that mean? That a site is ready to go. There are other weaknesses, obviously, pertaining to the community, certain lack of infrastructure, but a big source of heartburn is the inability to retain and recruit staff for existing employers because of the scarcity of housing. Let's go to the opportunities, please. Obviously, lots of opportunities. This is just the top 12. But if you take a look, lots to do, a lot that already does exist, and it's really building on your strengths, as Danny said earlier. Strengthening the entrepreneurial ecosystem. There's a long tradition at NAU and in Flagstaff. That's an area that can clearly be ramped up substantially, not just in Flagstaff, but also across the entire region. Obviously, building on the biomed and biotech sector, and this gets into something that really relates to economic stability and sustainability in targeted sectors. The two most fundamental economic underpinnings for any economy are EDS and MEDS, and that's educational institutions, post-secondary, as well as biomed and healthcare facilities. Now that NAU is, first of all, you have NAU, it's doing a great job. It's an anchor institution. What does that mean? It means that they pay higher than average salaries. They are huge purchasers of local goods and services. And they also stay in place because they are bound by the market and they are deeply embedded in the community. Now that NAU is getting a medical school, it makes eds and meds even more important. That's the ed side. And of course, Coconino College as well is important. And Embry-Riddle, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go to the meds side. The Northern Arizona Healthcare proposal, which was defeated regrettably by voters in Flagstaff, is the other part of the anchor institution. And they go together. They're not distinct. They're not mutually exclusive. They are inextricably linked. And to the extent that building on what already NAU has and facilitating Northern Arizona Healthcare's growth and modernization is really critical. In terms of quality of place and factors that are important to companies that are thinking about expanding or creating a new facility, healthcare now ranks in the top 12 for CEOs. It usually was in the top 20 around number 18, 19. It's in the top 12. And so I would think that finding a way to make that project work in Flagstaff would be a top economic development priority for the city. Let's go to the next slide. Threats, they deal primarily with external factors. Climate change, heard a lot about that today in council chambers. The potential of a recession, economic instability, acute shortage of housing. A lot of the feedback we get from Arizonans is what's going on in our border and what the impact is in terms of a human services standpoint, but also economic standpoint. The biggest threats that people shared with us from a Flagstaff specific standpoint was the threat of inaction to address some of these challenges. So the declining population base, people may be satisfied with that, but the bottom line is you have to regenerate the people who are dying and also the people who are leaving. And so this is not about growth for growth's sake, but no company is going to stay in a community where the population is declining, and no company will locate in a community where there's not going to be a pipeline of the kind of people they want to hire. Okay, Danny, back to you, I think.
Yeah, there's a part of the scope had dealt with growth opportunities. So each member municipality got some areas of focus. Flagstaff, obviously being as large it is and as big of a presence it was, we had to limit it to the top 4. And for our report, for our strategy, that included the Airport Business Park, which is a 32-acre proposition by the airport, slated for bioscience, technology, and research park. This is a 750,000 square foot proposal. It would include R&D, manufacturing, and hospitality space. The second was the Northern Arizona Healthcare Wellness Village that Ioana just mentioned, that again would have been located just across the 17 from the airport, from the Airport Business Park, which would have included a state-of-the-art hospital, outpatient surgery, imaging, rehabilitation, and clinic spaces. The plan, being called a village, included new housing, dining, retail, grocery, and new lodging, new hotel space. Another big reason this was chosen, not only for the prospect in and of itself, but with the infrastructure investment that would have been required to bring facilities, water, wastewater, all of that down to this site would have also opened up the availability to develop hundreds of additional acres for much needed housing that would be in the area. Number 3 was the Belmont Camp Navajo area, located west of Flagstaff, an area that can be developed for more affordable housing, being located outside of the main city. but also slated for potential new manufacturing facilities, new transportation and logistics facilities, new industry as well. So both a residential component and a commercial and employment component to that potential opportunity. And finally, another infrastructure project, the J.W. Powell Boulevard Expansion Corridor, which is an image of that located in the top right corner of this slide, servicing 2,200 acres when completed, and would help activate several master plan communities, which are also slated for the whole gambit of potential housing products, ranging from single-family detached homes to attached multifamily products, which is the private sector solution for affordable housing. So those are the four growth opportunities identified in the economic development strategy. And then I'll turn it back to Ioana for goals and objectives.
So based on all the research, all the data analysis, the analytics, the direct input and feedback from stakeholders, we have developed an actionable roadmap for helping to strengthen and diversify the Northern Arizona, the Icona regional economy. And I just wanted to share this quote because Icona is a great collaboration. I'm a firm believer in cooperation and collaboration. Sometimes it gets a little bit messy, but it's the most difficult human behavior known to humans, but it's critically important in order to make sure that people are able to realize their aspirations and not only envision the future, but make it a reality. So this is all about deliberate choices and actions, and it's really the economic development people who lose sleep at night worrying about how are we going to advance our community and meet everyone's expectations and aspirations. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, this is not intended to sit on a shelf, and I know already Gail has different meetings and committees with her board for execution. There's a lot to build upon in terms of assets, some of which could be strengthened, some of which really needs to be improved, and that includes the business climate. And that's not across the board in the region, but in certain places. The need to continue to invest in and build quality of life and quality of place necessities and amenities. Developing and growing the region's workforce through collaboration, education, and training. Everyone says they collaborate. There are big gaps in that collaboration, both on the side of employers who don't speak educator speak, as well as on the side of the educators who don't always necessarily translate correctly employer speak. This area of growing the region's workforce and collaboration and cooperation, more is needed. Obviously, expanding investment in and completing infrastructure that's already planned and the ability to accommodate some growth. Investing and expanding and evaluating economic development programs and resources. This is not just about Icona, although if the region wants to be serious about economic development, the region, public and private sectors, the regional private and public sectors have to step up and invest more and get serious about investing more in Icona so Icona can do what it was created to do. And then finally, there are many aspects of city government, county government, and other city and towns who do work quite effectively with regional and state and federal entities. Strengthening those existing partnerships and building new ones, really, really important, because the job of economic development doesn't rest with one person or one city or one community or one county. It takes a plethora of entities, people, ideas, and resources to make it work. And there's a specific, Danny, is this the last slide?
No, we've got just an example.
Okay, each goal has several objectives. There's metrics and milestones. So it's an accountable action plan. Again, designed to be executed. And this is just an example of one goal and objective.
Well, yeah, that's our presentation. Happy to answer any questions if there are any. But again, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Council, do you have questions before I open it up to public comment? Councilmember Matthews, Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Would I be exaggerating by making a statement that we could be facing an economic crisis here in northern Arizona based on the data that you provided?
Could you be more specific? I think I know where you're heading with this, but.
Well, there's definitely some action items that we can focus on and work towards, but to do nothing, if we don't take these actions, we could really have a huge economic negative impact to our region, specifically to Flagstaff, correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, the plan is for the entire northern Arizona region, but Flagstaff does represent the lion's share of both population, employment, workforce, and all of that. So, and to some extent, is responsible for some of the perceptions of, you know, anti-growth, anti-business. Most of those comments, I mean, actually, all of those comments are from the perspective of working, trying to develop and all of that within the city of Flagstaff. So yes, a lot of work does need to be done. You are either progressing or regressing is what we say in economic development. So yes, the action items are sort of an as soon as possible type of strategy. And as Ioana alluded to, investment is a big portion of that, investing in the plan.
Let me also share that we're looking at economic decline over time. Nobody wants that. And there are things that city government, considering that Flagstaff, as Danny said, is really the predominant economic force of this region. We, having personally lived regional economic development, I will say that any region is only going to be as strong as its weakest link. So Flagstaff is blessed, and so is northern Arizona, and so is all of Arizona. Flagstaff is surrounded by magnificent scenery. It's got beautiful, natural assets. It's got great employers. It's got a great university. It's got a great, community. I don't want to call it community college, because they're all becoming four-year colleges. It's got a great quality of place and quality of life, but it's going to experience economic decline if some of these existing factors, which didn't just pop up overnight, are not addressed and reversed. And I tend to be a little bit more blunt than Danny.
Well, I'll share one more comment. It was the number one comment by your existing major employers was the comment was that the workforce pie is stagnant and it's only so big, and that was shared by nearly every major employer in the city of Flagstaff. So meaning that where's my next worker going to come from? They did not have the answer for that. If I want to expand, and many do want to actually expand their existing operations, how do I do that? How do I expand my operation without this available workforce that seemingly they cannot find this new qualified available workforce? When a new employer is announced, there is a collective sigh, begrudgingly. It's not seen as a positive among other employers, that because they believe that this is just going to cannibalize my existing trained workforce and things like that. So that is why this growth, this housing strategy is highlighted several times throughout the strategy. Is it needs to be part of the economic development strategy. Without a place, without an available housing inventory and an attainable housing inventory, this workforce question can't be answered.
Thank you, and I agree and share those concerns with our workforce. When I came up here a couple of decades ago, it was already a factor here where they had to hire a recruiter to find somebody like myself to come up here because, you know, the talent pool is just here limited. It's not like other cities that have close by population of different skilled workers. And the housing is a huge crisis for us up here. You mentioned on the growth opportunities that the airport business park and NAH that now is questionable to what the future holds for them, Belmont and the JW PAL, and you know, I understand that a lot of what the airport business park was kind of foreseeing was that close proximity to the new hospital. So that concerns me a lot because it is hard to attract new industry and business expansion up here, especially with cost of living, cost of wages for employers, some rate increases on stormwater, and we're getting ready to evaluate rate increases on our water, which will just be another layer of economic cost to trying to attract new businesses up here. This may not be a fair question, but you know, most of us realized the economic impact that would happen if NAH was voted down in their move, and now it's undetermined what will happen to them or what they're going to do in the future. But if they don't decide to build a new facility in the near future, how much amplified does this make these statistics here as far as how it impacts our local economy? And I think that, and I just want to say one thing, we do have, you know, a lot of people are against growth in Flagstaff, forgetting that we need restaurants and store workers and other people just to stay here and survive. It's not about expanding our population as much as we need to attract workers and have jobs for people in order for us to just stay vibrant. So do you have any comments to that?
I think you have a representative there that may be able to answer it in more detail, and I don't know how optimistic or pessimistic everyone is at this point, but we can speak at least generally. Again, back to stakeholders, we asked, you know, we asked people to put on the hat of an employer, and then if they lived in the region, we asked them to put on the hat of a resident. And again, another very popular comment was the need for additional healthcare services beyond what they have today, wanting more specialized services, more specialists, healthcare specialists, you know, expanding the healthcare services that are existing today. It's also a huge concern when you are outside of a major metropolitan area is, what is my access to good quality healthcare? It's a quality of life issue. If you're talking to an executive that makes a very high salary, they have very high expectations for themselves and their family to have good quality healthcare. So this would have answered that question undoubtedly. You have a brand new, state-of-the-art healthcare facility right here in the city available to you. It's going to be able to attract top-notch doctors and healthcare providers because you have that new technology available and all of that, and now it's up in the air what you have, because it from anything I've seen or read that you also you don't necessarily have control over what the current hospital will offer going forward. You could see a reduction in services based on, you know, what they are able to offer or what they have available to them. So again, that's kind of a black box that you could go into lots of different scenarios, but you have this question mark of You do know what you have today, but you do not have any control over what you will have with that facility or others. And if you cannot as a city and a community approve and get things developed that would provide these quality of life assets, then you're putting those economic development goals at risk.
Let me also share from a image standpoint what Flagstaff, intentionally, unintentionally, inadvertently is communicating to the rest of the world is that it doesn't want growth. And it will be very difficult for the city, and I know you've hired a consultant to do your economic development strategic plan. It will be very difficult in reality it will be harder for Flagstaff over time to retain the employers it has, meaning to encourage them to expand there. They're going to expand elsewhere. It will be more difficult for just this one thing about Northern Arizona healthcare. It will be more difficult to make a bona fide, authentic, honest, and moral case to a company. Oh yeah, we will welcome you here. Sorry, facts speak louder than words, so to speak. But the most important impact, I think, is why have a medical school and not have a place for those graduates to do a residency? We have an acute shortage of healthcare and medical professionals, including doctors, in our state. And to create equity and to create a bigger, more robust pipeline, NAU's getting a medical school. Well, where are they going to go? They're going to go someplace else. They may leave our state. A lot of them do, as you know, to do their residencies elsewhere, but they may go down to Phoenix or to Tucson. So these are things that when you start peeling away the layers of the onion and look into it, these are hugely important considerations for Flagstaff. And from a quality of life, quality of place standpoint, not having the highest level of, acute care in a hospital and the latest and greatest, and the fact that the community wouldn't support it even for itself. I'm not talking about the government now, I'm talking about residents. It's problematic. It's very problematic.
Thank you, and I'll leave it at that. And I think we are already feeling some hesitation from other businesses coming in because of what just happened. So it is a little bit concerning for sure, but thank you very much.
Councilmember House.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple questions following up on the actual contents of the presentation. So I know you said that it's a much more robust document that was provided to Icona. I'm just wondering, because on one of the previous slides you showed the goals and the objectives. Are there strategies that you're recommending as well in terms of the actual action steps to achieving those goals and meeting those objectives that are presented as well?
Yeah, if you could just go back one slide, and so every goal, which is located at the top, has several objectives. So this is just one example for one of the goals is an actionable objective of how to achieve that goal. And then you see those check marks is basically the time frame that is expected to be able to reach that goal. So yes, there's I can't remember but there's several pages and dozens of objectives. Like I can tell you, Gail is both excited and overwhelmed at the number of action items. So these are things that have metrics. You can say yes, we did it, or no, we failed at it, or yes, we got there in this time frame. But yes, every single goal is broken down into objectives, and then they have milestones with them.
But also those objectives are action items to do. So there are strategies and tactics, and then metrics that everyone can use. The Icona board, the investors in Icona, the public sector, et cetera, to see how we're doing against, what kind of progress are we making? And again, this is not an Econa only action plan. It's really for everybody. It's going to require everyone moving in alignment and putting their shoulders to the wheel, so to speak, to accomplish these things.
Yeah. So the goals, yes, the goals are very general. They sound very generalized, almost kind of like a general plan type of a goal. But then these objectives is, how do you strengthen locational assets in the business climate? We are recommending that you conduct confidential surveys of businesses several times, like at least twice a year. Getting constant feedback from the business community, creating an inventory of shovel-ready sites, making that interactive, all of that. So, this gets very detailed, and each goal has several of these.
Great, thank you. The other question I had then was just, you had referenced earlier in the presentation having taken some of the existing plans, like the 10-year housing plan. I'm assuming you probably looked at the carbon neutrality plan, regional plan, all of the different plans that we have in existence for the city currently. I'm just hoping you can speak a little bit more to how much of this strategy was developed so that they work in partnership, if that makes sense, or in conjunction with each other. Are they intended to overlap and to bring those things together, or is this a completely separate strategy?
Well, all of them were factored into it, and let me just, council member, let me share with you just one of many examples. We were asked, why don't we have in our targeted sector priorities for Flagstaff, for the Northern Arizona region, the Econa region, why we don't have recommended sectors that are the same as Arizona Commerce Authority sectors. Well, because companies in those sectors, some of those sectors are huge water users. They have a huge footprint of land. They use a lot of energy, and they're not compatible with the values of and precepts as well as policies of Flagstaff plans as well as city government. So we very much took the carbon neutrality, the housing study, all the feasibility studies, all the analyses, transportation, general plan, etc., into account. We read all the reports, plans, and studies, and so it did in fact influence how we approached the economic development strategy. Now, let me also share that there are other opportunities outside of Flagstaff that make a lot of sense, but would not necessarily be compatible with where Flagstaff is and where it wants to be. They are not mutually exclusive. There can be carbon neutrality depending on how it's handled, and I work with a lot of ESG projects for companies. Economic development and growth are not incompatible with carbon neutrality and all of the other climate goals that have been espoused by community members as well as the governments within the Northern Arizona region. They're not mutually exclusive. There has to be balance, and that did influence what we recommended.
Yeah, the plan is also has to be considered a regional plan. So like Ioana was saying, there may be opportunities that are not compatible with the city of Flagstaff, but that may be very good opportunities for Winslow or Camp Verde. And similarly, there may be something that is not would not be an attractive opportunity in Winslow, but Williams, would the goals, the objectives, the assets of a place like Williams may be able to have that opportunity. So there does need to be, as each city looks at this plan and wants to participate in this plan, they should consider their community and its unique assets, strengths, and weaknesses, and maybe carve part of the plan out for them. And there may be other parts that aren't compatible. So we just, the geographic region is so vast, and the community is very, very different from each other, that, you have to take that into consideration.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I've been a small business owner in Flagstaff for 23 years, and I'm wondering how you reached out to the small business community. And I know it's hard to focus on the issues here in Flagstaff. We are a little unique in what we're facing. I'm wondering what were some of the top concerns from the small businesses, and are you offering specific guidance to what we're kind of going through? And I want to make sure that people in the room and online understand that the small business community is facing unique struggles, and I'd like to highlight what those might be, what you're hearing, and what we can do to address it. Thank you.
Well, Mayor, to address your question, I did interview several small business owners individually, and Gail was wonderful, truly wonderful in managing, connecting, and doing the logistics and helping to get all these interviews and roundtables set up. We had roundtables as well, with 10 to 15 business owners, and I will share with you that for the businesses located in Flagstaff, they're very concerned about the cost of doing business, very concerned, obviously, about the escalating cost of housing. And as Danny said, it's not just a Northern Arizona or Flagstaff problem, it's a U.S. problem. But when you consider the growth of Arizona, and that people really can't, they move here for a job and a better way of life, but they can't afford a house. And there's a recent study out, and a lot of small business people, the one-on-ones, shared with me that their kids had to leave the area to get a decent job and be able to afford to live on their own. There are more and more residual, multi-generational, and by that I don't mean going back 100 years, but Gen X, Gen Y and Gen Zs, more and more living at home longer because they can't afford to find any housing on their own, which is going to postpone childbirth. And the U.S. is already pretty much at a zero fertility rate. Were it not for our Hispanic population in the United States, it would be zero. So what does this have to do with small businesses in Flagstaff? They're experiencing it firsthand, that they don't think, and forgive me, many share that they just don't think the city is all that business friendly. They love the community. They love the people, that even though the community has grown over time, it's a place where people do authentically care for one another. But they're very concerned about finding the workers that they need for their stores, their restaurants, their hotels, etc. So they are the lifeblood of any economy, even the U.S. economy. So having a kind of operating environment that is conducive to their success is really, really important. And in fact, we do have some recommendations for small businesses and entrepreneurial businesses.
Yeah, and I would just add to that the two comments that I heard most frequently from our small business interviews were the number of unfilled job openings that they had, meaning that their existing staff was stressed in having to do the work that where they could not fill a position that was open, and also the higher minimum wage standard within the city of Flagstaff, which which they felt they were bearing the entire weight of financially, basically, that community goal was being borne by small business owners and having to provide that wage.
Thank you. Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a master's degree in land use planning, and I remember in one of my classes we had a discussion about downtowns, and it was discussed that downtowns never stay the same. You know, I think there's a lot of people in this community who would like to keep Flagstaff exactly the way it is now. But when we discussed downtowns, the conclusion was they either get better or they get worse. They never stay the same. And I kind of wonder if you have any comments if there's some truth to that for a city or a region also, expanding way beyond just a little downtown.
Danny, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, well, I am in full agreement of that. That's similar to my comment before, is that you know, the act of trying to oppose proposals, changes, development, redevelopment, does not consider you have no control to keep it exactly how it is, basically. So there's these proposals to move an area or region or a corridor forward that receives opposition, but you have no control over the outcome of that opposition. That you could have this regression, you could have businesses leave instead of saying let's just keep it how it is. You do not have control over the next step of what could happen. So you could see the degradation of a downtown or a town or a corridor. You could see a decrease in employment. I mean, it's basically, that's kind of, again, back to what we allude to in economic development and an economy is just, do you want to see a gradual spiral upward, or do you want or the downside of that is that you could start to experience this downward spiral. It's basically a slow death spiral of this receding population, aging population, becoming just a tourist town of Airbnb and hotels, things like that, where you lose the community fabric and things like that. So a lot of ripple effects to trying to keep things the same.
And it's impossible to keep things the same. A downtown really, truly is the world's window into the heart and soul of a community. And typically, obviously, it's more dense. There's more concentration of activity, public institutions, arts and cultural offerings and venues, things to do, places to eat. And it's really important to regenerate downtowns in our nation. Even though there's been a flight out to the burbs, we've seen this in the past. There will be yet another flight back into cities at some point in the future. But for Flagstaff specifically, the downtown is really represents the essence of the community, what has the greatest amenities that people want to experience. Everything is so experiential today, council member, and so reinvesting and regenerating. I have worked in markets where, blight and boarded up. Flagstaff is very blessed, as are most downtowns in Arizona, to not have that problem. But the reinvestment and always paying attention to the heart and soul of the community is really important, and that's found in the downtown.
Mayor, just have a comment and a question. I found it interesting that the report, when I read it, emphasized housing is a major issue. And I think this council already realized that as a major goal area. So I was pleased to see that we have some agreement in that regard. And my last question is, I think both of you made quite a few comments about the hospital and the importance of it. And Gail, I know you have a board member who I believe is here that represent the hospital, and I assume that they're kind of, okay, where do we go from here? Is it too early to ask a question about any ideas in that regard, or is that still in the very early stages? So, any comments about where we're going?
That wouldn't be a question for me, I think. Are you asking our board member?
Well, yeah, could your board member? And it may be that the answer is it's too early, we're still working it, but I'd be interested in knowing if they had anything to report.
Can you repeat the question?
Why don't you come up and then... So the question is, the background is the hospitals, it's important to have a good hospital, and I think we're in agreement that the existing hospital isn't quite adequate. But we also know what happened at the ballot box by 72%. So my question is, do you have anything to report about what the ideas are of how we're going to solve this issue? Or is it too early? It may be too early to answer that question.
It is too early. We don't have anything to share at this time.
Okay, we'll be anxiously awaiting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if we don't have any other questions from council, I'd like to take public comment, and then we can make our closing comments if we have any. So, Josh Mayer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Josh Mayer, I'm come to you today as the chair of the board for Icona. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the strategic plan. This plan and its accompanying growth projections should present a real concern. This plan articulates the importance of diversifying our regional economy and the critical nature that housing availability plays in the vitality of our region. NAU stands ready to address the regional workforce demands in healthcare, education, manufacturing, and in all of the identified target sectors. NAU is clearly an asset, a regional asset in this regard. The report demonstrates the clear bottleneck for economic growth as housing availability. And related to this issue is affordability. Already, organizations are challenged to attract and retain talent due to the cost of living, a significant portion of which is comprised of housing. Ultimately, this creates a society of haves and have-nots, those who were lucky enough to arrive at a point where housing was more attainable. Now, I applaud those of you who took the bold step, which wouldn't be considered so bold in many other communities, to approve the zoning change on behalf of NAH. A zoning change that could have had a cascading effect that could open up more land for the development of housing. It was not a popular decision, obviously, but it was bold. Now, Icona is well positioned to execute this plan, but more bold action will be needed from members of this council and all of the Icona partners to address the number one equity issue of our day, which is housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. Alexis Knapp-Poley?
Good evening, Mayor Daggett and council members. I know it's pretty late, so I appreciate you sticking around to hear what we have.
It's only 6 p.m.
I know. Okay. Hang in there. I'm the workforce training coordinator at Coconino Community College, and part of my job is supporting businesses and organizations in the county on their workforce training needs. I'm also part of the Business Retention and Expansion Committee with Icona. In this role and in other groups and meetings that I'm involved in, I learn about the training needs for employers and how the programs at CCC may align with those needs, as well as learn about ways we may be able to implement training programs to meet those needs. In many, if not all of these conversations, there's a consistent narrative around a general need for workforce, as the data that was just presented backs. Training the workforce doesn't mean much if people can't even afford to live here to work. We learned in the Econa Strategic Plan report that there are a lot of exciting opportunities to increase our economic vitality, but we do need to address the lack of workforce housing before anything else can be resolved. On a personal note, I was born and raised in Flagstaff. I attended Montessori Elementary, Montessori Preschool, Weitzel Elementary School, which is now Puente, MEMS, Coconino, and received both a bachelor's and master's from NAU. I am a solid Flagstaffian. I'm an active volunteer, was part of the Flagstaff Leadership Program last year, and have been involved in this community my entire life. And yet, my husband and I have good jobs, and we have conversations every single month about whether or not we can afford to live here. We've consistently been behind the line of being able to afford to purchase a home. It seems as though as soon as we get a raise or promotion, the housing costs increase exponentially. And I know I'm not alone in this. And I know that you've heard this a gazillion times too. But I implore you to think about the people who so desperately want to stay and work in Flagstaff and contribute to our growing economy. The people who make too much to receive any type of financial assistance, but don't make enough to afford mortgage or rent here. The people who love this place, but are being outbid by second homeowners or short-term rental companies paying in cash. We all know the housing issue is a hot topic in Flagstaff, but I ask you to please stay vigilant in working on potential solutions. Remember that the work you do matters. It matters to me and all those like me who love this town and would love to live here and work here. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. William Tyler Head.
So does this open for questions also to the presenters?
You can ask us, and we can ask them.
Oh, cool beans. Okay. So in the metrics that you ran, were you able to assess how many units? By units, I mean houses, rental properties, Airbnbs, et cetera. How many units in Flagstaff are owned by absentee landlords, i.e. people that are not Flagstaff residents? Were you able to run that? And then jumping off of that to council and to the mayor, what qualifies as a Flagstaff resident? I mean, we've seen this housing crisis play out, or affordability play out in the West in these scenic mountain towns, and the same tale goes there that's happening here. So yeah, that's my two questions. And I guess third question is for downtown and looking into the future. I've only been in Flagstaff for 2 years, so I haven't been to a lot of city council meetings, but you know, is there an ability to build up in downtown? That's just for personal awareness, I guess, and for others that may not know. But that's all I've got. Thank you for your time. I hope you get some good sleep tonight.
Thank you. And I don't know specifically about the strategic plan and the number of units owned by absentee owners, but the city has that information in terms of Airbnbs. And I believe we also have that information about second homeowners who aren't here year-round. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the first part of that is correct. The second part I would need to look into. I don't know about second home ownership, but we're glad to look into that. But we do have metrics on short-term rentals. Yeah.
And can you remind me what that percentage was?
Approximately, it was, if I recall correctly, it was around 2%, but I could be corrected on that. It looks like I'm about to be corrected.
Really close.
Okay.
It's around 22% for second home ownership.
No, I'm sorry. Short-term rental.
Oh, short-term rental, at
Yeah.
4%.
4%.
Yes.
Thank you.
And second home ownership is at 22%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And it's important to note, because this comes up repeatedly, that the city is prevented from really regulating the number of either Airbnbs or second homes in Flagstaff, or in any community. No community is able to regulate the number of them. We are doing everything that we can in terms of having Airbnb owners register their properties and pay a registration fee, which is all that the Arizona legislature allows us to do. And in terms of taxation, because that has been talked about as well, the Arizona legislature also determines what taxation is available in terms of property taxes. So, we're always looking at those metrics in terms of the housing needs in Flagstaff, and we, through various studies, know that we are already about 7,000, more than 7,000 units short for the people who are already living here. So I think we recognize the lack of housing all along the spectrum, from housing that needs to be subsidized up to market rate housing is needed in Flagstaff. And I don't know if the consultants have anything that they would like to add to that.
It looks like you've got your handle on the number. I think the last remaining request was, how many basically non-resident owners of housing that may be renting their properties to Flagstaff residents, and I don't think we have that information, but it can be analyzed via the Coconino County assessor's records on who owns it versus what the property's address is. So that could be analyzed. And then I'd just say generally too that the second home buyer is typically, that's typically the upper end of the single family detached product, and that a lot of times, especially for Flagstaff, is a function of the cost to develop the housing there. So a lot of times it's a combination of what land price is commanded, and then the cost of entitling through the city. So there could be some action there to look at. Is the city's processes adding to the cost of developing private, market rate housing, because at any additional time and is cost to that developer, and that ends up being part of the purchase price, if they can command that price. So it does end up trending toward that luxury end of the single family detached market, simply because the cost of the land was so high, and then the cost to develop and the cost of entitling was so high that it kind of pushes you toward that luxury end in terms of market rate. So when we're looking at attainable, affordable workforce level housing, it is most likely going to need to include public investment in terms of, reduced cost of land or a direct investment in the construction of a project and things like that. But then again, generally for just market rate, the ability to approve and get through proposals and increase the supply just overall will create competition and help decrease the pressure, the upward price pressure. And we're seeing that occur in Greater Phoenix. With the multifamily market, we're seeing a bigger influx of new supply, and it has a huge impact on price pressure currently.
All right, thank you. And we have a public commenter as well.
Mayor, thank you. I have Randy McGrain Randy, you can go ahead and unmute and offer your comments now.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I was involved in the development of the report presented tonight, and I really appreciate the questions and presentation. I want one of the counselors asked, is this an economic crisis? That's a really profound question. Perhaps in slow motion, it could be. And the way I've described it to people I know is, if you're a 43-year-old couple with a couple of 10 or 12-year-old kids, the chances of those kids being able to stay in Flagstaff is very, very low right now. And if you cycle that forward one more generation, for those that might be able to hang on the edge, there's almost no opportunity. And so we could have a stable population, but the houses will remain the same, while the people in them are likely to change. And the community that we're trying to protect could be strangled by the love we're trying to exhibit. So all these are tough decisions and discussions. It does take a change of perspective and attitude about what Flagstaff can offer to its existing community and to a broader community. So I'll stop my comments there, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any additional online comments?
No, Mayor.
Okay. So now I'm going to we've got a queue going here. So Councilmember Harris, then Councilmember House, then Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Icona, for your presentation, for arranging the presentation. And thank you all for doing such a great job in explaining. Oftentimes when you see these reports, you can't follow them, but I was able to follow along perfectly well, so thank you. The one thing that I would say to Icona is that you've given us that information. I'm assuming it's going to be out on your website somewhere. Or the report, people are going to be able to access it in some way?
Councilmember Harris, it is currently on our website.
Okay, great. The other thing that I would say to Icona and to some of the business people that are on your board, or just general people that are on that board, is that they need to make sure that this information gets out to the public. I think that we do a good job of bringing information to the council, but we probably don't do a good of a job as getting it out to the community, where it really makes a difference, because they need to hear what we're hearing. There was a lot of stuff in your presentation, and I'm not going to unpack all of it, but I am going to make a few comments that might that we might want to think about. Flagstaff is not going to stay the way it was when most of the people that are opposing a lot of things came here. It has changed drastically in the last 30 years since I've been here, and it's going to continue to change when I'm gone. And I think that we have to say that more and more, because people are really, they're digging their heels in, because they want this to look like it looked when they got here. And so my comment to people, and I'm going to be bold and say this, is that if you weren't born and raised here, then maybe you need to go back where you came from if you don't want anyone else here. So that's kind of a mean thing to say, but that's how I feel about it. And let me say another thing. In terms of our housing, we do have a housing crisis. All of us that sit here on this dais, we were lucky and blessed. And we should all be thankful that we got somewhere to live, because there's a whole bunch of folks that are serving us every day that do not have anywhere to live, and they're living 2 and 3. I told my son, do not come back to Flagstaff, because you will not be able to afford to live here until I die and you get my house. That's about, that's the reality of it. And so, and the last thing that I will say is that it is critical that people understand that 12,000 people made the decision about a hospital for 180,000 people. We allowed 12,000 people that voted no to make the decision about all of our health care. And so that's why I say to get information out to the public, because they need to know. So when issues like this come up, they're ready to make a decision, or they're ready to weigh in on it. Because only 20-some thousand people came out to vote, and 12,000 of those people voted no. So that should give us something to think about. And unfortunately, the people who are being affected by this can't afford to live in Flagstaff. So they couldn't weigh in on the conversation. They had no vote. They had no vote whatsoever. And so that's the sad part. And everything that happens here in Flagstaff, if we don't get that information out to the people who can make a difference, then we're just digging ourselves into a hole. And so thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for your attention.
Thank you. Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a themer when it comes to these meetings. We have dreamers and we have themers, and I am definitely well, I think I'm both, but I'm definitely a themer. For me, tonight's theme is really talking about the pathway to Flagstaff's future. This presentation was I think, an important conversation about the economic growth and the future of a number of different things for our community. And in the conversations that we had earlier, whether it was public comment or, well, really that's the only two conversations that we had tonight were the public comment, the city manager's report on the different workings of the city, and this presentation on this roadmap. But to me, it's such an important conversation that we're having in all of this, to understand that we are making decisions today that are going to impact the future of Flagstaff for years and generations down the line. I honestly wasn't expecting this conversation to focus so much on what happened with the hospital, but I did want to make the point of saying that I think we're never going to be at the point of agreeing with what happened in that situation. But I think that the question that we're really facing now isn't so much what happened, but what happens now. How do we ensure that we have good health care for Flagstaff and for Northern Arizona? How do we partner that with the needs that we're facing for housing and sustainability and all of the other interests that are often called competing in our community, but really have to work together to make things move for our community? One of the speakers earlier said that housing is the bottleneck for economic progress for our community. Healthcare is certainly the bandage that we need to start repairing some of those things and ensuring that people have the levels of care that they need to actually enjoy our community. But I think ultimately the message from this conversation is that we have so much work to do to create and expand equity in and for our community, not just economic equity, but also social equity and access to the different resources that are needed. So I just want to thank you and the presenters for reminding us of the bold action that's needed to move those things forward. I think that we need to recognize that boldness goes both ways. Sometimes the bold step is disagreeing and speaking up. Sometimes the bold step is voicing the unpopular opinion, but it's important that we're having these conversations across the board to make sure that we are doing what's truly best for our community as a whole. So I'm very grateful that this is the conversation that we're kind of wrapping the evening with, because I think that's giving us that important reminder. So thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. As a quick follow-up to the question about how many houses are rentals or whatever, I remember a discussion with a previous city manager before you were here, Mr. Clifton, and the previous city manager stated that 25% of our housing is owned by people that don't live in, the primary residence is not in this Coconino County. So that number is very close to the numbers we just heard tonight. So 25% of the homes are not available for people that live and work here. So what can we do about that? Well, we've been trying to work with the legislature, and we need to continue to do that. Basically, these short-term rentals, in my mind, they're basically hotels in a residential zone, which to me is inappropriate. So, but we need to work with the legislature on that. Another idea is that there should be a higher tax rate on second homes. So a person, their primary home, fine, give them the lowest tax rate possible, but they should pay more if it's a secondary home. We talked about a whole list of things that really need to change before we can bring people into the city and, workers. And my feeling is that workers will come if they can afford to. I mean, when I think of my first job out of college, I had to move about 150 miles. We moved to Flagstaff because my wife had a job offer at W.L. Gore. So people will move if they can afford to. So if we address the biggest driver on cost of living is your home, housing. So I think, in my opinion, if we can solve the housing problem, the high cost of housing, a lot of those other things that we brought to bear are probably not as important. Now, some may be. I mean, is there a place, can W.L. Gore expand? Can so-and-so expand? Or if a company wants to come here, is there somewhere that they can build? There's other problems. But I think the housing one is number one. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. Mr. Court had talked about the cost for developers to come in. And that is something that we can do directly. And we've talked about it, and we talk about it, but I don't know if anything's being done about it. I know we're having some reviews of some of our fees and stuff, but that is something definitely we can directly do. And I think it's time to stop talking about it and start doing stuff. I also hear a lot of complaints from developers about how long it takes to get through the process and how tedious it is and just the cost. And so I think we need to elevate that conversation and that focus if we're going to get serious about housing. One of the things that I heard often in the community when I was out campaigning a year and a half ago was, y'all talk about housing all the time, but nothing ever gets done about it. So I was really happy but shocked that we passed the housing bond, which gives me a little hope that there is some level of confidence there, but we really need to start taking action, because we just talk about it and it's costing us. It's costing the city in our level of employees and retention not to do something to create affordable housing and get that done. So I just wanted to say that publicly, that that's something we can directly do. And hopefully, in pushing the processes through faster, will hopefully create that competition, as Mr. Court also mentioned. And then just lastly, with NAH, I think that they are a private business. It got ugly, and so I know that I would only imagine that there's some fear of really thinking about doing anything in the city, and so I think that it benefits us all if, maybe the city takes some position. I know Councilmember Harris has mentioned this, and I'd like to see it move forward, that we do some kind of civics forum. There's a lot of misinformation that went around that I think impacted people's decisions and created some animosity that would make any industry come into Flagstaff, let alone the hospital, want to take on that venture and spend a few more $1 million just to have that experience again. And I think we need to acknowledge it and work together to help our community, educate our community on the processes and get some facts out there to help heal those wounds that'll probably take a long time to get healed. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, do you have anything? So thank you so much. I remember being interviewed more than a year ago for this, and am grateful for all of the work that went into preparing it and the webinars that you all did, which are also on your website, were excellent to break it down into manageable chunks that you could, that people can really absorb. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about economic development or economic growth, I think we get stuck on the word growth, and there's a divide that happens there. And I think for me, I think of it more as innovation and helping entrepreneurs that have great ideas put those ideas into action. And I think that kind of economic development enhances Flagstaff. Having Lowell Observatory and NAU and USGS, so many cool things have been discovered here, have been developed here, and I hope that we can all, as we're moving forward, think about the creative economy and think about what is it that makes Flagstaff so vibrant. And it's the people, it's how we care about each other, it's the people who want to invest in Flagstaff, to start a business or to grow their business. It's the employees who are, wanting to express their creativity. So, that's how I think about economic development. I think about it as putting some great ideas into action, and I think about it as all the people in this community that I love being able to stay here and keep contributing to the community. So that's my 2 cents. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Sure, yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to add on to what you said. I just thought an interesting statistic. So Arizona Public Service, APS, has a size up on their website that gives you business information and data to help you make decisions. And interesting fact is 93% of the businesses in our region are 20 people or under. So when we're talking about economic development, we're not out trying to recruit 500,000, 5,000 people. Ioana mentioned earlier about the alignment with the Arizona Commerce Authority. They're very much aligned with mega projects. That is not what we are out looking for. We vet each project. We scrutinize them so much. Are they a good use of our natural resources? Are they in touch with what's happening in our community? And we educate them, and we encourage them to become a part of the community, because that's only going to help them flourish and our community. So I think that's a really important thing that the public needs to be aware of, that we're not out recruiting big, massive companies to come to our region. I also wanted to add that of all of the priorities and strategies that Danny and Ioana presented, our board actually met for their first retreat earlier this month, and we did narrow it down to 3 things that we will be focusing on. And I think it's really important to share that with you now, because a lot of the comments revolve around that. So, number 1, housing. What can we do to influence and change housing? So we will be having our working groups that will be meeting by the end of the year. The second one is attitude and education about economic development and what does growth mean? What are we doing in economic development? How does that affect what's going to happen in our community? And then third is regional collaboration and policy. How can we work together better? I mean, obviously our organization is all about regionalism. That's how I feel personally that we get better outcomes. So I want you to know we appreciate the investment in Encona. We appreciate the investment to all of our partners in this plan. We haven't had it. It will not be sitting on a shelf. Like I said, we met earlier this month. You're going to hear a lot more about us and the progress that we are making towards those 3 priorities. And thank you for all that you do. I appreciate it. And thanks, Danny and Ioana, for being online tonight.
Yes, thank you both, and thanks to board members, thanks to everyone who shared information and perspectives with us, and thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
All right, we have our next round of public participation. I don't see any public participation. Okay, informational items to from Mayor, Council, and City Manager, and future agenda item requests. Let's start with Councilmember House.
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you, Mayor. We have already talked about a lot of events this weekend, but I also want to highlight it's Art Walk Friday. So please come downtown and support local. Thanks.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Vice Mayor. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Matthews.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
I just want to remind everyone that it is Giving Tuesday, and one of our favorites, Tinkertopia, has a matching gift, and they're hoping to raise $7,000 today. So when you get home, get online and make some donations. City Manager.
Nothing from me, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thanks everyone. We are adjourned.